Chapter 3793 Chapter 3793 Primary Heaven Pill. Chapter 3793 Primary Heaven Pill. Muley impatiently chased the others away. Gao Mingjiang darted a concerned look at Feng Wu, but Feng Wu only waved at him, telling him that she would take care of it. In the end, Gao Mingjiang had no choice but to lead the team away. They didn't go very far but stopped a few hundred meters away where they could stay out of the wind. Meanwhile, Kai Xia and the others had gathered around. Seeing that Feng Wu and Li had nothing better to do, Muley frowned. "We don't have enough firewood here, nor do we have enough food. You two do your job. If you offend Sister Caixia, I'll cut your heads off." Fearing that Feng Wu would be displeased, Li tugged at her sleeve to calm her down. Feng Wu shook her head at Li, indicating that she wasn't mad. She was trying to come up with a plan. Feng Wu pretended to be busy with the chopping board, but she kept her ears open, for the three of them were eating rabbits around a campfire while sipping the steaming hot soup in the pot. Muley was the first to speak. "Sister Caixia, we've been running for thousands of miles, but we still haven't seen her. Do you think she's not here?" Caixia frowned but didn't say anything. Xylan, on the other hand, shook her head. "That won't happen. According to our princess's divination, that person will definitely come to Northern Yen, and it'll be in the near future." Feng Wu's stomach lurched. A divination? That Princess Rao knew how to do that? Was she so sure that Feng Wu would come to Northern Yen? Putting Master Ling Hu's words together with Princess Rao's action, Feng Wu felt that a big secret she didn't know was slowly unfolding. Muley went on. "The 13 paths that lead into Northern Yen have all been blocked, and Her Royal Highness's secret guards are all scattered around. But we haven't heard from her yet. How strange." Xylan said, "I've been wondering. How did Miss Feng Wu offend our princess? By the sound of it, our princess wants to kill her at all costs." Muley shook her head. "I heard that the assassins of the guillotine were involved as well." "That's right." Xylan turned to Caixia. "Sister Caixia, you're the princess's favorite. Do you know why that is?" Caixia didn't reply. Xylan was still curious. "I've been with the princess for so long, but I've never seen her so determined to kill a person. I heard that Feng Wu is just a girl, and we've put in so much effort." Caixia looked at her two deputies and shook her head. "That's because you don't know. So, Sister Caixia, you know the answer, don't you? Just tell us. What's going on?" The two girls cajoled Caixia. In the end, Caixia had no choice but to say, "If I tell you, you'll have to keep it a secret." "Yes." The other two nodded repeatedly. Caixia said, "I don't know much, but I have some leads. Have you heard of the primary heaven pill?" Both girls shook their heads. Caixia said, "It's only natural that you don't know because there's probably only one such pill left in this world." She smiled bitterly. "Let's put it this way. There are 10 levels in total in the physical enhancement of one's body, but if one takes this pill, what will happen then?" The two girls asked in unison. Feng Wu pricked up her ears as well. Chapter 3794 Chapter 3794 Level 8 Chapter 3794 Level 8 Feng Wu pricked up her ears as well. The primary heaven pill? She had never heard of it before. Feng Wu wanted to ask Little Phoenix in her head, but she suddenly realized that Little Phoenix had had an epiphany along the way and had gone to cultivate and make a breakthrough. Hence, Feng Wu pricked up her ears and listened to them. Just then, Caixia, the chief maid, snorted at Feng Wu. "Why isn't there any hot water? Bring us some hot water." Xylan scolded Feng Wu. "One moment." Fearing that they might get angry, Li fetched some hot water in a hurry. She was so nervous that she almost spilled it. "I'll do it." Feng Wu took the wooden bucket from Li, smiled at her, and handed it to the maids. Muley was still asking curiously, "Sister Caixia, what will the pill do? It's so difficult for us to train our bodies." Saixia snorted. With that pill, if you're lucky, you'll be able to rise directly to Level 8. Level 8? Hearing Saishia's words, the other two maids cried out with envy. They were so envious that they thought they were going to lose their mind. The three of them had all worked so hard in physical enhancement, but they had only reached a few levels. What about the pill? Muley took a deep breath. Don't even think about it. How can you possibly have a share in the pill? There's only one of them in this world. Saixia snorted. It belongs to our princess. If there's only one of them in the world, of course it belongs to our princess. Xylan nodded. She's one of the best cultivators of her generation. Even Zhua Qingluan of the Junwu Empire isn't her match. Muley mumbled, but I heard that the Junwu Empire has a genius girl. She has the divine phoenix blood. What divine phoenix blood? Are you going to believe her just because she says she has the divine phoenix blood? Xylan was very supportive of her princess and couldn't stand the compliments of other people. She smirked and said, if that Feng Wu really is that amazing, why did she stay quiet for so many years and only came out to promote herself when His Royal Highness was getting married? Sister Saixia, don't you think Feng Wu is so scheming? Next to her, Feng Wu was speechless. But what Saixia said surprised Xylan. Not really. Saixia frowned. Miss Feng Wu isn't to be underestimated. Why? Xylan was displeased. Saixia said, if she's as useless as you say, why would our princess need secret guards like us to track her down? And after so long we still haven't found anything. That alone makes me think that she's something. Sister Saixia, you're amazing. Muley nodded. I think so, too. Xylan didn't like the sound of that. I don't think she's all that capable. Kaixia smirked. Our princess isn't the only one that's after her. The Zhou family of the Junwu Empire, the Hua family, and the Dongsang Kingdom are all looking for her, and they've all sent some very influential people. We haven't heard anything yet. She's done a great job of staying hidden. But, Saixia smirked. If she keeps hiding like this, she won't be able to keep that treasure. Chapter 3795. Chapter 3795. Don't it tell anyone. Chapter 3795. Don't it tell anyone. What treasure? Everyone turned to look at Saixia. Meanwhile, Saixia lowered her voice. I'm Onelf telling voucher don't tell Anvone. I swear. I won't tell a soul. Otherwise I'll be struck by lightning. Me too. I won't let anyone else know. They both raised their hands to make an oath. Only then did Saixia nod. That's a secret. I wouldn't have told you if we weren't outside. I heard that the primary heaven pill isn't our princess's yet. Muley frowned. What do you mean by that? Saixia said, the pill belongs to someone else, but it'll be our princess's after a month. Muley's eyes flickered and she asked, someone else? Do you mean Miss Fenghui? Xylan spat on the ground. Bullshit. How can that one-of-a-kind pill be Feng Wu's? That's impossible. However, Saixia said indifferently, maybe it really is hers. What? Xylan stared at Saixia in disbelief. Meanwhile, Feng Wu, who had gone back to the chopping board and pretended to be busy, was amazed as well. A primary heaven pill. It was hers. She couldn't believe it. Could it be because of her senior brother Huyen? Feng Wu still had a lot of questions, so she listened carefully. However, Li didn't understand a word. She looked utterly confused and was terrified. Xylan said anxiously, how's that possible? What does that pill have anything to do with Feng Wu? How can it be hers? Saixia said, our princess has dropped some hints, so we have to find Feng Wu and kill her. If she gets to the imperial capital safely. If she takes the pill, the princess will be so mad that she'll kill us. Saixia was very serious, and so were the other two. Xylan said, Our princess is a very talented cultivator, but she's physically weak, so she needs that pill. The other two nodded in unison. Feng Wu thought to herself, I need it too. If the pill really was hers, she would never give it up. If it wasn't her, she still wouldn't let Princess Rao have it because that woman had been trying to kill her. The two of them. Just then, Xylan made a hand gesture. Saisha frowned and rose to her feet. That's enough. Let's go. She then gave Xylan a warning glance. Xylan nodded. Kai Shao and Muley jumped onto their horses and galloped off, their scarlet capes stirring up the wind in the dark. Xylan glanced at Feng Wu and Li and said indifferently, Your service is quite nice. Here's a reward for you. After that, she tossed out 2 silver ingots. She tossed one piece to Li and the other to Feng Wu. Catch it! Xylan gave them a threatening look. Seeing the shiny silver ingot in the night sky, Xylan smiled and nodded. You've done a great job. Come with me. I need to talk to you. Feng Wu had an idea, but Li had no idea what Xylan was going to do next. Feng Wu was alarmed, and a dagger appeared in her sleeve. She and Li followed Xylan through the woods. Chapter 3796 Chapter 3796 Clean Up the Mess 1 Chapter 3796 Clean Up the Mess 1 Feng Wu and Li followed Xylan through the woods. Come here. Xylan waved at Li. Despite her fear, Li still forced herself to walk toward Xylan. Xylan glanced at Li and smirked. You have the plague. Die. As soon as she said those words, Xylan struck Li's head with a knife. Ah! Li's stomach lurched. Just then, there was a whooshing sound. A dagger cut Xylan's throat. Xylan turned around and looked at the people behind her. Feng Wu stood behind her with an indifferent look on her face and a calm look in her eyes. She was holding a dagger, and blood was trickling down the blade. Xylan was dumbfounded. She was supposed to be the one in control and could decide who lived or died, but now… Feng Wu watched as Xylan fell. Little Feng, frightened, Li grabbed Feng Wu's hand and burst into tears. She was too scared to speak. Had it not been for Feng Wu, she would have been dead by now. Feng Wu patted the back of her hand. I need to take care of this. Otherwise, Feng Wu recalled that there were still a lot of people in the Gao family. Things would have been much easier if she was all by herself. She could run as fast as she wanted into the woods, but what about the Gao family? They weren't just names, but flesh and blood. They had been eating, living, and getting along well with each other. Feng Wu couldn't just stand there and watch them get killed. She told Li, Go back to your family now and set out immediately. You have to reach the border city at noon tomorrow. Otherwise, you won't be able to get in. But, Li was at a loss. Feng Wu said calmly, If you panic now, so many people in the Gao family will lose their heads. Are you sure you still want to panic? Li had been panic-stricken at first, but hearing Feng Wu's words, she immediately calmed down as if someone had poured cold water on her head. She knew that Feng was the most capable member of the team, so she listened to the girl. Feng Wu said, You don't have to worry about anything here. Go back to your team and tell them to set out now. As for me, tell them that they've taken me away. Li said, But… Feng Wu said, No buts. If you tell the Gao family about what really happened, do you think they'll be able to handle it and keep it a secret? You heard it yourself. They're Princess Rao's people. Li shook her head anxiously. Her family couldn't take it, and they would have a nervous breakdown. Feng Wu nodded. So, you don't have to tell them what happened here. Just tell them that the 3 people have taken me away. As for what happened here, you don't have to worry about it. And you… Feng Wu smeared something on Li's face. The ointment will fester your face for a while, but it'll recover in time. Don't worry. It's to keep you alive. Li was concerned. What about you? Are you going to turn yourself in? Feng Wu chuckled. Why would I do that? Don't worry. I have my own plan. Don't you know what I'm capable of? After much persuasion, Feng Wu finally persuaded Li to leave. Chapter 3797 Chapter 3797 Clean Up the Mess 2. Chapter 3797 Clean Up the Mess 2. However, Li wouldn't be able to withstand such pressure. She wouldn't tell anyone, but she would tell Gao Mingjiang. Feng Wu knew that very well. After Lady Wang went back, Feng Wu stared at Xilan's body. Soon, a fully dressed Xilan showed up. Needless to say, it was Feng Wu. As for Xilan's body, Feng Wu had melted completely with some potion. After taking care of Xilan's body, Feng Wu ran to the horse as fast as she could, jumped onto it, and disappeared out of sight. Before long, she caught up with Caixia on horseback. "What took you so long? Did you take care of everything?" Muley frowned at her. Feng Wu had observed Xilan's behavior, so she had no problem mimicking her. "It's been taken care of." Feng Wu smirked. "It didn't take me much effort to kill a commoner." Muley was confused. "Then why did it take you so long?" "Sister Caixia thought something had happened to you." Feng Wu smiled. "You'll see when we get back." Muley snorted. "You're such a poser." Feng Wu said proudly, "I'm not telling you." This was how Xilan usually bickered with Muley. If Feng Wu was too careful now, she might give herself away. Neither Caixia nor Muley realized that their friend had been replaced by Feng Wu. Caixia turned around and gave them a stern look. "Quiet. We must hurry up." Muley stuck out her tongue and stopped talking to Feng Wu. Feng Wu was curious. Where were they going? Shouldn't they be going back to the imperial capital? The border city was right ahead of them, but Caixia took them around a corner. Instead of entering the city gate, they headed for a main road nearby. Feng Wu and Muley looked at each other. Why didn't they enter? "We're going to see someone." Caixia narrowed her eyes. Before long, they arrived at a mountain peak. Standing by the edge of the cliff, they saw a bottomless pit in the mist. From afar, they could see the mist rising and falling, and the border city was barely visible through it. Caixia didn't get off the horse, so Feng Wu and Muley remained on horseback as well. Looking around, Muley saw that the three of them were alone, so she asked curiously, "Sister Caixia, who are we here to see?" Caixia waved at her to calm her down. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and pricked up her ears. She heard footsteps coming their way. She was right. A moment later, a figure showed up in front of Caixia. It was obvious that Caixia knew the person. They nodded at each other. Feng Wu noticed that it was a woman. She wore a white dress and had a slender figure. There was a white flower on her sideburns. She was a mourner. Seeing her, Caixia dismounted, walked up to her, and bowed respectfully. "Miss Hua, it's been a while." "Hua." Feng Wu recalled what happened a few days ago. The Hua family and the Zhuo family had joined hands and tried to destroy the Feng family, but Feng Wu had planned everything out. In the end, more than half of the masters of the Zhuo and Hua families were killed or injured overnight, and the two families were on the verge of collapse. Things weren't so bad for the Hua family, but the Zhuo family had collaborated with the Dongsang kingdom, and the evidence was irrefutable. Chapter 3798 Chapter 3798 Hua Family. Chapter 3798 Hua Family. But the Zhuo family had colluded with the Dongsang kingdom, and the evidence was irrefutable. As a result, the entire Zhuo family collapsed. Some of them ran away, but Emperor Wu caught the rest. The Zhuo family's house was ransacked, and many members were beheaded. It was a boisterous scene. But the Hua family. Feng Wu remembered that apart from the capable cultivators who had died in the arena, everyone else in the Hua family was still alive. However, after this battle, the Hua family had lost most of its members. Who was this young lady? Caixia and the young woman didn't try to hide their conversation, so Feng Wu heard everything. "Still no news of your princess?" Miss Hua frowned at Caixia. Caixia shook her head. There were several suspicious cases, But it turned out none of them was Feng Wu. She really knows how to mislead people. Miss Hua smirked. With all the traps we've set up, I don't believe that she can get away. She's probably dead by now. Saixia nodded. That's possible. Miss Hua stared at Saixia. If you do find anything on her, remember, her head belongs to the Hua family. As for what your princess wants, we'll hand it over to her on a plate. Saixia said, Of course. Miss Wu disappeared as quickly as she showed up, and Kaishao was soon back on her horse. Muley asked curiously, Is that Miss Hua, our princess's best friend? Saixia nodded. Muley said, She seems to hate Feng Wu. Saixia said, The Hua family is the source of much of our princess's information on Feng Wu. She has made the Hua family miserable, and more than half of the spiritual overlords have been killed. The Hua family will never forgive her for that. Muley said, Is Feng Wu really that capable? Saixia frowned. I hope not. Muley said, You have a point. What if she takes our princess's pill? Saixia nodded. Muley said, Apart from us, the Hua family is looking for her as well. I heard that the Zhou family is also looking everywhere for her. If she's smart enough, she'll have gone into hiding by now. She'll never come back to our capital. She's not stupid. Saixia frowned a little. She's so different from other people. Even the princess can only divine a fraction of her behavior, and it can only prove that she's still alive. We can't tell where she is. Of course, if she's very close, our princess may be able to divine it right away. She's a great diviner. You don't say. She's the smartest person I've ever met. No one can predict the future like her. Come. We're going to see the princess now. Saixia waved the things in her hands. It was something that Miss Hua had told her to bring to Princess Rao. Feng Wu frowned a little. A prophecy? A divination? Was this Princess Rao really as good as she was said to be? If she was, she should be able to identify the real Feng Wu. It seemed that Feng Wu had to leave the team as soon as possible. That was what Feng Wu thought and what she did. The three of them had no problem getting into the border city, but tents had been set up outside, and they were filled with people from the south. Feng Wu asked around and realized that people from northern Yen couldn't enter the city all at once. Most of them could only make do with a straw hut outside. Chapter 3799 Chapter 3799 Northern Yen 1 Chapter 3799 Northern Yen 1 Saixia said, Go back and get some rest. I'm afraid we'll have to set out again tomorrow. Muley said, Sure. She then waved at Feng Wu. Sister Xylan, I'll see you here tomorrow. She dashed off after that. Meanwhile, Saixia was rushing into the imperial palace as fast as she could. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. So, she had been left here. Princess Rao lived in the imperial palace, but because of her influential force, she had a residence outside the imperial city, which was where Feng Wu was now. Feng Wu thought to herself, Since I'm here, I might as well have a look. Hence, she only walked a short distance before she saw a group of people rushing out. Feng Wu noticed that they were all soldiers, and each one of them was covered in scales and holding a sharp saber. Involuntarily, Feng Wu shifted and hid in the shadows. She heard the leader say, Where is she? Where is the girl that stood here just then? How intimidating! Feng Wu frowned a little. She remembered clearly that she had been standing there before, and of course, she wasn't the only one who had been passing by. Just then, an old man arrived. Master Ling, what's the matter? Steward Wang, was someone here before? Master Ling asked in a displeased tone. A yellow fox was circling around the spot where Feng Wu had been standing, wagging its tail. Here. Steward Wang couldn't make up his mind because he hadn't noticed anything. Well, I didn't notice any person. Master Ling, what happened? Steward Wang didn't look too happy. He had always been in charge of the outer courtyard of the princess's residence, and he didn't like Master Ling's attitude at all. Master Ling cupped his hands at Steward Wang. I'm not being arrogant, but it's really urgent. Her Royal Highness has come up with a new divination result. The person she's looking for has shown up here before. What? Steward Wang's stomach lurched. He had always known that the princess was looking for someone, and a lot of people had been sent out of the manor these days. And he wasn't the only one. Feng Wu felt as if she was going to suffocate. What was this Princess Rao's divination ability? How could she pinpoint the location? She had indeed been there before. Luckily, she wasn't the only one. What Feng Wu didn't know was that Princess Rao had spent a lot of time and effort to locate Feng Wu. However, it was a one-off attempt, and she couldn't afford to use it all the time. It wouldn't be so easy to locate Feng Wu again. Master Ling said, "She might not be here in the residence, but we're going in the right direction. Steward Wang, please take care of what happens next." He then turned to the soldiers behind him. Search the area within 5 kilometers from the southeast of the princess's residence. No one is to be spared. Yes. Only then did Feng Wu relax a little. It seemed that the princess had divined a radius of 5 kilometers. But that was already terrifying enough. After all, Feng Wu hadn't recovered her spiritual essence yet and couldn't use it yet. How frustrating. If one had to compare them, Princess Rao was like a giant with a bunch of minions, while Feng Wu. Chapter 3800 Chapter 3800 Northern Yen 2 Chapter 3800 Northern Yen 2 If one had to compare them, Princess Rao was a colossus with a lot of foot soldiers, while Feng Wu was all alone. The difference was simply too great. She couldn't confront the princess just yet. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead with a wry smile. She had to find Huyen Yanba as soon as possible and get her strength back. That way, she would be able to handle Princess Rao, who wanted her dead. Feng Wu quietly left the princess's residence, making it look like she was leaving the city. After she left the city, she faked a scene of fighting and made it look like Xylan was dead. That way, she could cover her tracks by impersonating Xylan, and the Gao family wouldn't be incriminated. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was walking around the city in her ugly girl form. The capital city of Northern Yen was similar to the imperial capital of the Junwu Empire. The streets were all horizontal and vertical. It was spacious and full of people. Just then, Feng Wu heard a voice in her head. "I know how to find Huyen." It was Little Phoenix. As it spoke, a bird with colorful feathers came out of her sleeve. Feng Wu noticed a tuft of white hair on its head. She poked it in the forehead. "That's new." Little Phoenix raised its chin. "That's because I'm getting much better." Feng Wu asked curiously, "How capable are you now?" Little Phoenix gloated. "I'm a peak spiritual overlord now." Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Before, Little Phoenix was about her level. Before she lost her ability, she was only a junior spiritual overlord. But now, Little Phoenix had reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage after an epiphany. That was fast. Feng Wu looked at it in amazement. Little Phoenix looked equally amazed. "That's right. That was fast. But it's really strange. Is traveling the world really that amazing?" Little Phoenix scratched its head. It didn't know why, but it was always a good thing to make a breakthrough. Feng Wu thought to herself, "Although I've been chased all the way here, Little Phoenix has made so many breakthroughs already. It's worth it." Little Phoenix said earnestly, "You need to get your body back as soon as possible. I have a feeling that you're going to make a great breakthrough as well." Feng Wu nodded. Little Phoenix wasn't the only one who had that feeling. She had it as well. "By the way, what did you say?" Feng Wu remembered what Little Phoenix said earlier. "Only by taking that pill from Little Yanba can you get your cultivation ability back." I know where to find him. Come with me. Little Phoenix stood on Feng Wu's shoulder and showed her the way. Right now, Feng Wu was as ordinary as an ugly girl, and she didn't have any spiritual essence fluctuation, so no one noticed her. Feng Wu followed Little Phoenix's lead and kept walking. She had lost count of how many tunnels and turns she had taken. There! Little Phoenix gloated. I visited Yanba a long time ago. He lives there. Pointing at the woods a short distance away, Little Phoenix said excitedly, Let's go! However, as soon as they showed up, a cold shield hit them. Feng Wu stumbled back with a thump and was almost crushed. SSSS, she drew in her breath. Chapter 3801 Chapter 3801 Northern Yen 3 Chapter 3801 Northern Yen 3 When she looked again, she saw that there was no obstruction. Just then, Feng Wu heard a voice. Hey, are you here to try your luck too? Feng Wu couldn't help but turn around when she heard the voice. A handsome teenager stood in front of her and looked at her in amazement. Try my luck. Feng Wu was confused. That's right. Aren't you here to try your luck and hope that you can break in and meet the Grandmaster? The teenager glanced at Feng Wu, convinced that she was pretending. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. You have a point. Everyone wants to be favored by the Grandmaster, and everyone wants to try their luck. What if they succeed? Don't you think so? The teenager grinned at Feng Wu. Feng Wu chuckled. She still didn't get it. Crossing his hands behind his back, the teenager sighed. I've seen a lot of kids like you. See? Over there is my refinery shop. I can see people trying their luck here every day. Look at this tablet. It says, if fate wills it, I'll give something to you as a gift. It's from the patriarch of the Huyen family. He used to be an emperor for a day, so he deserved to be called His Majesty. Moreover, he was the top alchemist back then. The teenager gave Feng Wu a gloating look and spoke in a tone that suggested he had been there before. Therefore, over the years, many capable cultivators have come here and either tried to force their way in or prostrate on the ground. They all want to meet him. But no. The teenager waved his hand. 4 years I've never seen anyone go in. Feng Wu glanced at him. You're too young to make that claim. The teenager snorted. I have my dad and my grandpa. Neither of them has seen anyone go in or come out. I don't know if our patriarch is still there. Chen. A cold, authoritative voice rang out. It was the voice of an old man. Yes, Grandpa, I'm here. I'll be right there. The teenager called Chen turned around and called out to the old man in the room. He then turned back to Feng Wu with a casual smile on his face. Young lady, you're so unlucky, aren't you? The stone tablet hasn't moved, which means that you're not the chosen one either. Huyen Chen grinned at Feng Wu and patted her on the shoulder to comfort her, but he was very pleased with himself. Feng Wu ignored him, for all her attention was on the inscription on the tablet. Nothing had happened, which meant that she hadn't been able to remove the barrier. Maybe she could try it with her own blood. Feng Wu was still thinking that way when she sensed a strange gaze on her. She was very acute. Even with her current cultivation level, she could still easily sense that she was being followed. As expected, the next moment Little Phoenix told Feng Wu, a pair of eyes are staring at us from the old tree to the northeast. Feng Wu looked in that direction involuntarily. Sensing Feng Wu's gaze, Huyen Chen looked in that direction as well. He murmured to himself, wait, they're still here. Why are they still watching? Chapter 3802 Chapter 3802 Northern Yen 4 Chapter 3802 Northern Yen 4 Feng Wu asked, do you know who they are? Huyen Chen smiled. Of course I do. They're from the princess's residence. An idea struck Feng Wu, but she feigned a confused look. Why are the people of the princess's residence here? Chen gave it some thought and waved at Feng Wu. Feng Wu moved closer curiously. Chen asked, "Do you really want to know?" Feng Wu said, "Yes." Chen said, "Since you're that eager, I'll tell you." Actually, Chen. A short distance away, the old man's voice rang out again. "Grandpa, I'm coming. You don't have to rush me like this," Chen said grumpily. He then turned to Feng Wu. "Since you have nothing better to do, why don't you come have some tea at my place?" Feng Wu asked, "Am I disturbing you too much?" Chen waved his hand. "No, it's not like that. My grandpa is the most hospitable person. It's so rare to find such a lovely girl who knows nothing. You have to play with me. Come with me." Chen led the way, and Feng Wu followed him with Little Phoenix. Meanwhile, Feng Wu and Little Phoenix exchanged looks. The two of them were communicating in their heads. "This Chen is an interesting character," Little Phoenix said. Feng Wu asked, "You saw it?" Little Phoenix nodded. "He has the fire and metal attributes, and they're very pure. He's a great weapon refiner, but he's still living here. It must have something to do with Yanbo." Feng Wu asked, "Is your little Yanbo really the best weapon refiner?" Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu. "Of course not. That has to be your master. But little Yanbo was a metal cultivator back then, and he was quite good at forging weapons. Someone's watching. I'll sneak in tonight. If little Yanbo is there, I can ask him for the primary heaven pill." Recalling that Little Phoenix hadn't heard the conversation between the maids, Feng Wu told it what had happened. "What?" Little Phoenix almost exploded. "Little Yanbo is going to give that pill to that princess? That can't be. That pill is meant for you. Didn't your master forbid you from refining your body? When the time comes, you'll take the pill, which will make you better than other geniuses who have worked hard for decades." "What princess? Are you kidding me?" Feng Wu asked, "Is that so?" Little Phoenix ran around in circles in the ring. "Has little Yanbo turned rogue? He shouldn't have. He was the most honest man back then. He was so quiet that he was easily bullied. All he ever did was forge weapons. Does he want to keep the pill for himself and give it to his offspring? I'm so mad." Seeing that Little Phoenix was so anxious that its eyes were bloodshot red, Feng Wu said, "It's only a rumor, not the truth. Don't worry. Princess Rao hasn't obtained the pill yet." Little Phoenix said, "No, I'll go have a look. I have to reason with Yanbo." After that, Little Phoenix dashed off, despite Feng Wu's intervention. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. She hoped that Little Phoenix was alright. She hoped that senior brother Huyen hadn't changed. "Kiddo, why are you sighing?" Chapter 3803 Chapter 3803 Stingy Shop 1 Chapter 3803 Stingy Shop 1 Hearing Feng Wu's sigh, the teenager couldn't help but laugh. "Do you find my shop too shabby?" Feng Wu was woken up by Chen's voice. When she came back to herself, she saw that they were outside his shop. "Stingy shop." Feng Wu looked back at Chen and wanted to laugh. That name. Chen rolled his eyes at Feng Wu. "Laugh all you want. Don't hold it back." Feng Wu chuckled. Chen shrugged. "I don't know why the old master gave us that name. It sounds so petty, and it doesn't mean well. My grandpa said that our patriarch came up with the name. I'm sure that's not true." "What are you talking about?" A slim, handsome old man strolled out of the shop. He glanced at Chen, then glanced at Feng Wu out of the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but glance at her again. But that was it. He wasn't interested in her after that. Chen greeted Feng Wu warmly. "Come in and have a seat." His grandfather glanced at him. "Who's that?" Chen gave the old man a warning glance. The old man pulled Chen to the side and whispered to him. He frowned. "Can that scrawny girl do it?" Yen said, although she's a scrawny girl, she looks full of vigor. Maybe she'll do. Old Yen was still frowning. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was studying the shop with her hands behind her back. In short, it was a blacksmith's shop with all the necessary furnishings. Moreover, Feng Wu saw a few pieces of dark iron in a corner. Wait! Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Just then, Yen walked up to Feng Wu and saw that she was interested in the iron in the corner of the wall. He said grumpily, "These are just pieces of junk. It'll be a shame to throw them away, but they won't make anything useful. They're useless." Feng Wu turned around and looked at Yen in bewilderment. The look gave Yen the creep. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Feng Wu stared at Yen again. "A piece of junk." Yen nodded. "Of course it's junk. If it really was dark iron, we would have used it to build weapons already. You know what? Although our shop is known as Stingy Shop, all the weapons we build are for influential people. Even the commander-in-chief of the Empire's military uses weapons that my grandfather made." Feng Wu glanced at Yen, indicating that she didn't believe him. "Hey, why won't you believe me? Our shop is one of the most famous shops in northern Yen. Why won't you believe me?" Yen caught up with her and saw that Feng Wu was staring at the pieces in the corner again. He was speechless. "You don't know anything. Why are you staring at that junk? Have you heard of Lord Timeless?" Yen glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu had never heard of that title until a few days ago. "Lord Timeless? You mean Gui Tsulai?" Feng Wu asked indifferently. "That's right. It's him. He's the best swordsman in northern Yen. We made his sword." Feng Wu frowned a little. "That's a peak sage-level weapon, right?" "You don't say." Yen was elated to see that Feng Wu knew what it was. "I saw my grandpa make strike one when I was little. Do you know how amazing our shop is now?" Feng Wu rolled her eyes. "I miss the part where that's my problem." Yen grinned. Feng Wu frowned. "What do you want?" She saw the cunning smile on Yen's face. Yen didn't answer Feng Wu's question. Instead, he asked casually, "Now that you've mentioned it, may I ask where you're from and what's your name?" Feng Wu said grumpily, "Is this a household register?" Yen was confused. "Miss, what's that?" Feng Wu waved her hand indifferently. "I'm only joking. It's nothing. My surname is Feng, as in the wind that blows through water without leaving a trace." Feng isn't a big surname in northern Yen, but it's a major surname in the Junwu Empire. Feng Xiangnan, the northern Feng general, is a well-known figure in the Junwu Empire. I wonder if you've met him before? Feng Wu shook her head. Yen was disappointed. "You have a point. The general is so superior, and I can tell that you're just an ordinary girl. It's only normal that you haven't met him. As for Feng Sun, I'm sure you haven't met him either." Feng Sun. Feng Wu glanced at Yen. "Feng Nun? As in the son of northern Feng Mansion?" "You don't say. That's him. Feng Sun. Do you know him?" Yen stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu thought, "You didn't tell me if Feng Sun is your friend or an enemy. How am I supposed to know if I know him?" Hence, Feng Wu didn't answer. The silence was the best answer. As expected, Yen thought that Feng Wu didn't know who that was. He snorted. "He set me up a long time ago, and I haven't had a chance to make trouble for him yet." Feng Wu was glad that she didn't reveal her relationship to Feng Sun. She wiped away her cold sweat and smiled at Yen. "He tricked you? What did he do?" For as long as Feng Wu could remember, Feng Sun had been driven mad by Jun Linyuan and her, but she had never seen him setting anyone up. Yen snorted. "See those pieces of scrap metal in the corner? He sold them to me. He said they were sacred iron and could make a top-grade sacred weapon. I thought I could make another sword like Strike On, so of course I bought them. And with the iron, he gave me a drawing, saying that I could build a sacred level arm of commandment. I believed him then. Do you know how much I paid for it? Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. 1,000,000. I spent 1,000,000 yen coins to get back from someone else. I thought I could forge the arm, but I only realized later that the iron was fake. There was only a layer of dark iron on the outside, but it was fake on the inside. Huyen Yichen was so frustrated that he almost stomped his foot. Feng Wu glanced at him. The fact that he was still so angry showed how much he hated Feng Sun. When did it happen? Feng Wu asked curiously. Huyen Yi said, when we were 10. Feng Wu was speechless. It had been years. However, 10 years ago, Huyen Yichen was able to make a deal with Feng Sun, and he was the buyer. Chapter 3804 Chapter 3804 Stingy Shop 2 Chapter 3804 Stingy Shop 2 However, Huyen Yichen was able to make a deal with Feng Sun 10 years ago, not to mention that he was Feng Sun's buyer. That was proof enough of Huyen Yichen's background. That made sense. Not everyone could address Huyen Yanba as their patriarch. Huyen Yichen was still angry. He led Feng Wu to the pile of stones and said grumpily, Look at these pieces of junk. Do you know why I kept them here instead of throwing them away? You can't bring yourself to part with them? Feng Wu tried to provoke him. Of course not. The teenager stomped his foot in frustration. I want them to stay here and remind me all the time that I have to get back at Feng Sun. I want to wash away my humiliation in front of my brothers. Feng Wu admired him for his pride. Huyen Yichen smacked his forehead. Hey, why am I telling you that? Enough with the junk. We have more serious matters at hand. Feng Wu was confused. What do you mean? Huyen Yichen scratched his head and grinned. How about you donate something? Feng Wu asked, What? Huyen Yichen spread out his hands. It's not much. Just a little blood will do. Just give me a little blood. Feng Wu stared at him. Why do you need it? Huyen Yichen led Feng Wu to an iron table and said, This is my new weapon, the ultimate yang fork. Look, it's a semi-saint weapon. Feng Wu said, So what? Huyen Yichen said obsequiously, You look so young. I bet you don't know anything. Feng Wu knew that such a supreme-grade weapon had to be nourished with human blood, especially the blood of an innocent girl. Feng Wu shook her head. No. Huyen Yichen was confused. Why not? I don't need much. Just a bowl will do. But Feng Wu wouldn't let him. Her blood was the divine phoenix blood, and every drop was precious, let alone a bowl. Feng Wu wouldn't mind if it was a divine weapon, but Huyen Yichen's weapon was obviously a semi-saint one. Feng Wu shook her head again. Not with this weapon. Huyen Yichen pleaded with Feng Wu. Gosh, please. Please. Where else am I going to find a girl with such clean eyes? Feng Wu glanced at Huyen Yichen. No. Huyen Yichen said, What do I have to do to make you say yes? Feng Wu glanced at him. You're much more capable than I am. If you want my blood, you can force me. Why don't you do that? Huyen Yichen said grumpily, I'm not in the habit of forcing myself on other people. Plus, you don't have the divine phoenix blood. If it's the legendary divine phoenix blood of the Junwu Empire, I might actually force you to give it to me. Feng Wu stared at him. You really will do that? Huyen Yichen smiled bitterly. The divine phoenix blood is the best bloodline in the world. Although my ultimate yang fork is good, it's only a saint-level one. It'll be such a waste if I use the divine phoenix blood on it. I'll kill myself if I do that. No, I won't try to take the divine phoenix blood by force. Huyen Yichen heaved a long sigh. But I'm still curious. What will happen if I add the divine phoenix blood? I can't wait to see it. The divine phoenix blood was equivalent to Feng Wu herself. Therefore, if Feng Wu contributed her blood, her identity would become very obvious. Chapter 3805 Chapter 3805 Stingy Shop 3. Chapter 3805 Stingy Shop 3. While Feng Wu was hesitating, Huyen Chen wouldn't let go of her. You don't have the divine phoenix blood. Just give me a bowl, will you? Please. Feng Wu, who was several years younger than Huyen Chen, said coldly, No. Tch. Huyen Chen glanced at Feng Wu. It's just a little blood. Don't be so pretentious. Feng Wu said, Try take it from me. I dare you. Huyen Chen said, I would never do such a thing. He stormed off after that. Before Huyen Chen left, Feng Wu asked, Can you sell me the fake iron in this corner? Huyen Chen waved his hand. Take them all. After that, he was out of sight. Hearing Huyen Chen's words, Feng Wu went straight to the pile of iron. She crouched down and studied the iron. Every now and then, she would pick up a piece, examine it carefully in the sunlight, and smile a little as if she was looking for a bargain. Huyen Chen went out, but the old man didn't. Seeing Feng Wu's reaction, he frowned and was curious. Kiddo, what are you doing? He couldn't help but ask. Staring at the iron, Feng Wu said in a serious tone, One of them is real, and can be used to forge an arm of discipline. Old Huyen almost burst out laughing. He didn't think much of it, but the girl was so good at bragging. Seeing that Feng Wu was going to elaborate, old Huyen waved her off. Go back to what you were doing. I'm off to work. After that, he walked up to his workshop and started forging. Feng Wu had noticed the weapon he was forging. It was a flaming spear made from semi-divine materials, but it was only a weapon of the saint level. What a pity, thought Feng Wu. Feng Wu thought, if I have it, I'll have a 90% chance of refining a semi-divine weapon. Seeing that was sighing, old Huyen gave her a suspicious look. As he pounded the refined iron, he asked Feng Wu, Kiddo, why are you sighing? Feng Wu was worried that Huyen would destroy the weapon, so she said, If you can plant an explosive flame on it, it'll become a semi-divine weapon. Huyen glanced at Feng Wu and shook his head. What do you know? Don't make me laugh. Old Huyen pursed his lips. How are you going to inject that flame? It's impossible. Feng Wu said, Shall I give it a go? Old Huyen turned her down. You know nothing. You can't even pick up this hammer. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Feng Wu looked at him. Are you sure? Old Huyen shook his head. Feng Wu said, Your flaming spear is made from very rare materials. If you don't try it now, you won't have a chance to change it after you make it into a sacred weapon. Why, little girl, you know that the flaming spear is a sacred level weapon. Old Huyen couldn't help but give her another look. Before Feng Wu could say anything, a voice came from outside. She can't tell a saint from sacred weapons. Grandpa, I told her that you've made Gui Tsulai's sword, and it's a saint-level one. That's why she thinks that you can make a saint-level one every time. Chapter 3806 Chapter 3806 Stingy Shop 4. Chapter 3806 Stingy Shop 4. Old Huyen guffawed. This girl was so. He almost believed her. Feng Wu was speechless. She was really good at refining weapons. Although she didn't have many opportunities to do it herself, she had a solid theoretical base. Since that was the case, Feng Wu didn't try to retort. She shrugged and said, As long as you don't regret it. Huyen Chen chuckled. You're so funny. You sound like an adult. Feng Wu shrugged. Well, I've finally found some blood. I don't need to beg you anymore. Humph. Huyen Chen made a face at Feng Wu. Feng Wu ignored him. Both Huyen Chen and the old man were busy with their own task. One was a semi-saint level fork. The other one was a saint level flaming spear. Feng Wu looked at the piece of junk in the corner again. Huyen Chen glanced at Feng Wu. You like it that much? If that's the case, why don't you play with it? Feng Wu said, "Isn't it your reminder? Are you sure you don't want it?" Blue veins popped on Huyen Yichen's forehead, and he snorted. "I don't want to talk to you anymore." Feng Wu chuckled. Since Huyen Yichen didn't take up the work table, Feng Wu picked up the 3 pieces and started working on them in the stove. Seeing the serious look on her face, Huyen Yichen could only shake his head with a wry smile. Refining weapons was a subject that depended on one's talent as well as qualifications. The girl didn't seem to have any talent or qualifications, but Huyen Yichen decided that he would let her do whatever she wanted and treat her as if she were playing with mud. Feng Wu didn't want to expose her spiritual essence before she met her senior brother Huyen. However, she needed to use the arm of discipline now to protect herself. Huyen Yichen, who was gloating over the semi-saint weapon he had just made, darted a glance at Feng Wu before showing off in front of the old man. Grandpa, what do you think of my ultimate yang fork?" Old Huyen gave him an appreciative look. His grandson was already able to forge a semi-saint level weapon at such a young age. With his capability, he would be able to work on half of the tasks in the shop. Even if the old man died now, he would be able to rest in peace. However, despite his comfort, he still put on a straight face and said indifferently, "It's all right, but you'll have to work harder. At your age, your patriarch can already refine a saint-level weapon, but you've only managed to refine a semi-stain one by sheer luck. You're still too far behind him. Got it?" Huyen Yichen nodded humbly. He didn't get to gloat for long. He felt a little lost and disappointed. Just then, Feng Wu beckoned at Huyen Yichen. "Hey, come over here." Huyen Yichen walked up to her and asked grumpily, "What?" Feng Wu said, "I'll teach you how to forge a semi-divine weapon." "Gosh." Huyen Yichen gave Feng Wu a "you idiot" look. Feng Wu said seriously, "I'm not joking." Huyen Yichen was speechless. Feng Wu said, "Help me with the forging. You'll see." Huyen Yichen felt a headache coming on. He decided that she wouldn't turn back until she ran into the wall. He would see how she was going to do it. After that, Huyen Yichen was ordered around by Feng Wu. She would make him add iron powder, set up an explosion, and cool things down. Chapter 3807 Chapter 3807 Stingy Shop 5 Chapter 3807 Stingy Shop 5 Huyen Yichen almost lost his temper. Why was it so troublesome? However, when he recalled how the girl had introduced herself as a poor girl who had fled from the south, his heart softened. Forget it. She was so unlucky. I'll help her as my good deeds of the day, thought Huyen Yichen to himself. But, before long, Huyen Yichen's eyes widened when he saw what he had made out of 3 pieces of scrap iron. What's that?" After the girl's random instructions, Huyen Yichen realized that the iron he made wasn't dark iron. "What's that?" Huyen Yichen touched it and saw that it was made from a special material that shone with a divine light. "It's so tough. Am I seeing things?" Huyen Yichen rubbed his eyes in disbelief, but when he looked again, the iron was still there. He reached out and touched it, but the hardness didn't change. As a weapon refiner, he knew what that meant. He gave Feng Wu a strange look and didn't come back to himself for a long time. How was that possible? It was supposed to be a pile of junk, but no matter how hard he tried, it stayed useless. "How? You made it by sheer luck, didn't you?" Huyen Yichen looked at Feng Wu and murmured. Feng Wu asked, "What was that?" Huyen Yichen said, Nothing. Was it luck? It had to be. Otherwise, how could a girl know weapon refining? He was from an influential family of refiners, and his grandfather used to be taught by the patriarch. Although Huyen Yichen had always been humble, he was actually quite influential in northern Yen. He didn't understand the girl at all. Just then, Feng Wu looked up and asked, "Where's that drawing?" Huyen Yichen asked involuntarily, "What drawing?" Feng Wu said, Didn't Feng Sun give you the material to build an arm of discipline? Where's the drawing? Huyen Yichen's face went scarlet red. He lied to me. Feng Wu frowned before Huyen Yichen could finish. You didn't lose the drawing, did you? Huyen Yichen said, that drawing was fake. My grandpa appraised it himself. Feng Wu said, so? Huyen Yichen gritted his teeth. Just wait and see. He wanted to see what the girl was going to do. Huyen Yichen rushed into the room, came back with a small brocade box, and tossed it to Feng Wu. See for yourself. Feng Wu opened the brocade box to find a drawing inside. She took it out and read it carefully. Huyen Yichen said grumpily, It's fake, isn't it? I told you so. Dar Feng Sun, if he dares to come to Northern Yen again, I'll make him pay. Feng Wu gave Huyen Yichen a strange look. Huyen Yichen said, What? He stole my pocket money for 10 years. Why can't I scold him? Feng Wu shook her head. You can't. Huyen Yichen asked, Why? Feng Wu didn't reply. Instead, she asked, What do you want? Huyen Yichen said, What? Feng Wu said, How about I give you a copy of Refinable Metal Synthesis? Huyen Yichen said, What? Isn't that the legendary book? He had heard the title of the book, but he had no idea what it was about. Chapter 3808 Chapter 3808 Refinable Metal Synthesis. Chapter 3808 Refinable Metal Synthesis. Feng Wu asked in a serious tone, Will a copy of Refinable Metal Synthesis be enough to exchange for the metal I just made and the drawing of this arm? Of course. Huyen Yichen was so excited that he almost burst into tears. But how can you have it? Huyen Yichen wouldn't believe it. Feng Wu said, I just do. Huyen Yichen said, If you have it, I'll trade with you. Feng Wu said, It's a deal. Huyen Yichen was thrilled. Silly boy. A short distance away, old Huyen shook his head when he heard their conversation. Spiritual iron? Refinable metal synthesis? How childish. As Patriarch Huyen's outer sect disciple, the old man had only heard about the refinable metal synthesis that all refiners dreamed of learning. However, the girl had just given his grandson a refinable metal synthesis as a gift. It was like child's play. Grandpa! Grandpa! Only then did Huyen Yichen come back to himself. He waved at the old man and said, Grandpa, she really has forged the divine iron. Old Huyen wouldn't come over. He was still humming a tune and working on his flaming spear. He didn't believe Huyen Yichen at all. Huyen Yichen was about to drag his grandfather to his side when Feng Wu began to separate the drawing with a special liquid. It immediately caught his attention. What are you doing? Huyen Yichen moved closer and watched Feng Wu curiously. Feng Wu was careful but steady. Before long, Huyen Yichen saw that the edge of the fake drawing had been peeled off. What? Huyen Yichen's eyes widened when he saw this. Because he saw that the edge of the drawing had split open from the edges. There were 2 drawings. They were stuck together with a special potion. Huyen Yichen held his breath, fearing that he might blow the drawing away. His heart was pounding, and he had a feeling that something big was going to happen. That was indeed the case. Feng Wu separated the drawings in less than 15 minutes. Right now, 2 drawings are sitting quietly on the table. One was what Huyen Yichen called a fake drawing, and the other one was a brand new one. Huyen Yichen didn't look at the drawing he had been looking at for nearly 10 years. Instead, he focused on the new one, and his eyes narrowed as he studied it. Let's begin, Feng Wu told Huyen Yichen. Huyen Yichen stared at Feng Wu. You mean? Feng Wu said indifferently, the one underneath is the real drawing of the arm of discipline, isn't it? Wasn't it? Huyen Yichen wanted to agree with her, but there's another one underneath. How can there be another one? I haven't heard of it after all these years. Scratching his head, Huyen Yichen burst into tears. Feng Wu smiled. The person who made this drawing used a deceptive trick. Ordinary people won't be able to find it even if they stare at it for 100 years. There's no need to blame yourself. Huyen-Chen looked at Feng Wu in frustration. So, I'm just an ordinary person? Feng Wu asked, what do you think? Chapter 3809 Chapter 3809 The Arm of Discipline 1 Chapter 3809 The Arm of Discipline 1 Huyen-Chen was frustrated. He shook his head repeatedly. I don't believe it. I don't believe it's the drawing of the arm. Feng Wu couldn't care less about his mood and began to order him around. Huyen-Chen said, I don't believe that this drawing can be used to build the arm. Feng Wu said, all right. However, Huyen-Chen was genuinely curious. Could she really make the arm of discipline? In the end, he couldn't fight back his curiosity and started working on it for Feng Wu. With Feng Wu around, he didn't have to worry about not doing a good job. Because if she didn't do it right, Feng Wu would smack down with the ruler. Ouch! That hurts. Why did you hit me? Huyen-Chen gave Feng Wu a pleading look. Feng Wu said solemnly, you'll thank me in the future. Keep going. Feng Wu was very strict, but Huyen-Chen was still a little inferior in his cultivation level, so he was having a hard time. He had to follow Feng Wu's instructions every single time before he could move on to the next step. Maybe not for the time being, but in the future, Huyen-Chen would be so grateful to Feng Wu that he would almost kneel down. Feng Wu had Huyen-Chen build one component after another. Huyen-Chen didn't see any hope and was frustrated. A few days later, Huyen-Chen finally met all Feng Wu's requirements. He stuck out his tongue and was exhausted. I'm exhausted. Huyen-Chen let out a breath of relief. You've made everything you need, haven't you? Is that enough? Huyen-Chen gave Feng Wu an aggrieved look. Feng Wu had been giving him pointers over and over again in the past few days, and Huyen-Chen wasn't an idiot. On the contrary, he was a very talented refiner and had long seen through Feng Wu. She couldn't have done it by accident but had to be someone with real talent. At that thought, Huyen-Chen couldn't help but glance at Feng Wu. The girl was so young, but she was already so capable. That couldn't be. Huyen-Chen looked at the iron platform again. If these parts were put together. Under Huyen-Chen's gaze, Feng Wu began to combine the parts. Just then, old Huyen finally finished working on his flaming spear and wrapped up. He carefully examined the sacred weapon he had made himself. It was the second sacred weapon of his life, and the first one was without a doubt Strike One. Old Huyen thought that if other people knew that he had such a sacred weapon, many masters would come to him for it. The more he thought about it, the more pleased he became. He glanced over in passing and saw that Huyen-Chen was still standing there, so he walked up to him. Old Huyen was about to scold his grandson when he saw Feng Wu assembling some spare parts. This girl's hands were so steady. She was as good as a refiner at his level. Old Huyen was about to say something when he saw the spare parts in Feng Wu's hands. He wasn't looking at how the parts were put together, but what they were made of. Is that divine iron? Huyen's eyes lit up. Huyen-Chen nudged him. Grandpa, stay out of my way. He moved closer to Feng Wu as he spoke, fearing that he would miss a single step. He had a feeling that if he missed this chance he would regret it for the rest of his life. Chapter 3810 Chapter 3810 The Arm of Discipline 3 Chapter 3810 The Arm of Discipline 3 All old Huyen could think of was the metal. Divine iron? Where did that come from? He murmured to himself. Huyen-Chen said grumpily, that was days ago. Didn't you notice? Old Huyen didn't notice it because all his attention was on his flame spear. At that thought, old Huyen snorted. My task is a big deal. I don't have time for kid stuff like this. After that, he turned to leave. Huyen Chen couldn't help but ask, "Grandpa, are you done?" Of course. Old Huyen had always been very confident in his skills. A saint level one? Huyen Chen asked curiously. Of course. Old Huyen raised his chin and waited for his grandson's praise. But his grandson changed the subject. He took old Huyen's hand and led him to Feng Wu's side. "Grandpa, what level is this arm?" "An arm of discipline?" Old Huyen frowned. "No ordinary refiner can make it. Plus, your drawing was fake. I told you already. Apart from your patriarch, no one else can make an arm of discipline." However, before he could finish, he heard a calm voice. "Done." By then, Feng Wu had finished assembling all the parts. It was slightly bigger than a human arm and had a metallic sheen to it. It reminded one of the fangs of a ferocious beast, which could take a person's life at any moment. "Is it the arm of discipline?" Old Huyen shook his head. "I think it's just an ordinary arm booster. The real one isn't like this." "What does it look like then?" Huyen Chen asked curiously before Feng Wu could say anything. As a matter of fact, Huyen had only heard about it before but hadn't seen it in person. Therefore, he didn't know what to say. "Grandpa, look at this drawing. It's exactly like this." Huyen Chen handed the real drawing to the old man. "Wait a minute." Huyen's eyes widened when he saw the drawing. He couldn't hide the excitement in his voice. "Where did you get it? Why is it here?" Huyen Chen asked. "Grandpa, is it real?" Old man Huyen murmured, "I think it's real if I'm not mistaken. Look at the curve, the tenacity, and the sharpness. But how is it possible for anyone to build something like this?" "But Grandpa, we've made it already." Huyen Chen looked at the old man. "I made them myself." "Bullshit." Old Huyen wouldn't believe it. "I know perfectly well what you're capable of. You can't possibly build something like that. Even I can't do it." Huyen Chen was almost in tears. "It's true, Grandpa. I really made it myself. Miss Feng taught me herself." Old Huyen looked at Feng Wu suspiciously and asked, "Kiddo, is that true?" Feng Wu nodded. Old Huyen said, "Can you show me the arm?" Feng Wu glanced at him. "Didn't you say it wasn't real?" Old Huyen cleared his throat. Chapter 38:11 Chapter 38:11 The Arm of Discipline 4 Chapter 38:11 The Arm of Discipline 4 He hadn't checked it yet, so of course he didn't know if it was real. But the arm was definitely made of divine iron. Feng Wu put the arm on. Once she put it on, her right arm seemed to have become a robotic one, which looked rather out of place. Just then, Feng Wu frowned. Because she felt the arm bite her. She could feel a bite on her wrist, and blood was oozing out of it. Huyen had been watching the arm the whole time, so he didn't notice the look on Feng Wu's face, nor did he know that the arm was absorbing the blood. "I think it's a saint-level weapon." Old Huyen looked amazed. "I can't believe that the two of you can build a saint-level weapon right under my nose." "That's so." He didn't know what to say. He considered himself to be very talented in the metal element, but at his age, he could only make 2 saint-level weapons. How could these 2 kids make one already? Feng Wu didn't move and let the arm suck her blood. She vented her sarcasm inwardly. She had the divine phoenix blood, and hoped the arm wouldn't go too far. That was enough. After a while, Feng Wu could no longer feel the pain. The arm had probably absorbed enough blood. "Wait, that gloss, that quality." Old Huyen's eyes lit up. "Why do I feel that the arm is more than a saint-level one?" But he didn't say it aloud because it was impossible. Even he had to exceed his capability to make 2 saint-level weapons in his lifetime. How could these 2 kids possibly make something more advanced than that? There was no doubt about it. Just then, Feng Wu activated her arm. With a whoosh, the fist of the arm smashed into the iron table. Rumble! The meter-thick iron platform was smashed into a lump of iron by the arm. Old Huyen stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. Huyen Yichen stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Huyen Yichen swallowed and stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. I thought you didn't have any spiritual essence. Huyen Yichen hadn't sensed any spiritual essence from Feng Wu so far, which was why he had assumed that she didn't know anything about cultivation. However, what she did just then, Feng Wu was pleasantly surprised. The arm was more powerful than she had expected, and it had to be at least a semi-divine weapon. Feng Wu glanced at Huyen Yichen. One can't attack without spiritual essence? You're so ignorant. Huyen Yichen glanced at his dumbfounded grandfather, then turned to Feng Wu eagerly. Can I see it? Can I? Feng Wu took off the arm and handed it to Huyen Yichen. It'll fit you automatically when you put it on. Try it. The arm wasn't an inanimate object, but a living one because of the divine metal. Huyen Yichen was pleasantly surprised. He had put it on. I'll test its power. Huyen Yichen shouted. Iron Tower, come out! As soon as Huyen Yichen said those words, a figure as tall as an iron tower appeared. Chapter 38:12 Chapter 38:12 Flaming Arm 1 Chapter 38:12 Flaming Arm 1 As soon as Huyen Yichen said those words, a figure as tall as an iron tower appeared. Feng Wu looked over and saw that the person was 3 meters tall. He had bulging muscles and looked very strong. Bring it on! Huyen Yichen aimed his arm at the man. Iron Tower smirked. To him, his young master was as weak as a chicken. He could pick the boy up without breaking a sweat. That was what he thought and what he did. Therefore, he only waved his hand as if he was playing a game. However, the next moment, SSSS. Iron Tower drew in his breath, for his young master's right arm was very tough, and a sharp blade suddenly appeared in his palm. The sharp blade stabbed into the back of Iron Tower's hand. However, Iron Tower had a very strong defense system. The blade was only able to make an inch in before it was stopped. Even so, it was enough to attract his attention. Young master, that's an interesting arm. Despite his words, Tai didn't think much of the arm. Huyen Yichen relied on his speed in battles, so he moved as fast as he could. He was changing directions all the time. The arm of discipline was also making unpredictable moves with his right arm. Several times Iron Tower was hit. He was covered with wounds, but they were all minor ones. Iron Tower looked at Huyen Yichen and said, Young master, I don't want to play games anymore. The next second, he expanded. He was already 3 meters tall, but now, he was even bigger. He kicked Huyen Yichen away. Huyen Yichen fell to the ground with a thump. He couldn't accept the fact that he still couldn't defeat Iron Tower. Young master, please give in, Iron Tower said indifferently. Huyen Yichen gritted his teeth. No. I'm going to defeat you. I can only defeat him if I defeat you. Iron Tower frowned. Young master, you can't even defeat me, let alone your enemy. Just stay here. He turned to leave after that. Feng Wu was confused. Huyen Yichen had to defeat Iron Tower to defeat his enemy? Who was his enemy? Seeing the pained look on Huyen Yichen's face, Feng Wu went up to him and reminded him in a low voice. Huyen Yichen's eyes lit up. Stop right there. I'll try again. Huyen Yichen shouted at Iron Tower. However, Iron Tower didn't even look back. Stop right there. Huyen Yichen suddenly aimed at Iron Tower, and a black arrow flew out of his arm, aiming at the latter's back. Iron Tower turned around and caught the arrow with one hand. To his surprise, the next second, the arrow exploded. There was an unknown liquid in the arrow, and it was highly inflammable. The liquid splashed all over him. The next second, flames rose out of Iron Tower and engulfed him. Ah! He buried his head in his hands and didn't know what to do. Iron Tower, Huyen Yichen was equally anxious. Iron Tower was his guard, not his enemy. He had been too reckless. Chapter 38:13 Chapter 38:13 Flaming Arm 2 Chapter 38:13 Flaming Arm 2 Young master, I give in. Help me! Iron Tower was almost in tears. Huyen-Chen rushed over to put out the fire for him. After the fire was put out, Huyen-Chen saw Iron Tower had been charred black. Huyen-Chen said guiltily, "Iron Tower." Iron Tower waved his hand and wiped his face, but he wasn't injured. After all, he was very well defended. I'm fine. Iron Tower waved his hands, still shaken from the explosion. He almost peed his pants. Seeing that Iron Tower was all right, Huyen-Chen sat down on the ground and let out a breath of relief. I almost peed my pants too. After that, they both looked at Feng Wu. Although Iron Tower had been staying outside for the past few days, he knew perfectly well that the girl had been instructing his young master on how to build everything. Whenever his master's work didn't meet her standards, she would strike him repeatedly with a stick. Several times, Iron Tower almost couldn't control himself anymore. Huyen-Chen rose to his feet and slowly walked up to Feng Wu. His eyes were filled with astonishment and pleasant surprise. Iron Tower and I are 2 levels apart. I thought I wouldn't be his match no matter what, but if Huyen-Chen wanted to kill Iron Tower, he had a million ways to do it when the man was on fire. Feng Wu stared at the arm of discipline. That arm is an incredible weapon. Huyen-Chen's eyes twinkled as he looked at his right arm. By then, old Master Huyen had taken a step forward, and all his attention was on the arm. Take it off. Let me have a closer look, the old man told Huyen-Chen. Huyen-Chen didn't want to, but he took it off in the end. Huyen couldn't keep his hands off it. As he studied it, he murmured, "This is so much better than the saint-level one I made before." Huyen-Chen asked curiously, "Grandpa, what level is this weapon? Is it really much better than a saint-level one?" But a saint-level weapon is already very rare. Even Strike 1 is only a saint-level weapon. We've never seen a divine weapon before. It's not a divine weapon yet but only a semi-divine one, said old Huyen. The one Princess Rao has is a semi-divine one. Huyen-Chen cried out, Princess Rao thinks very highly of that thing. It's as good as her own life. Old Huyen kept his gaze on the arm and didn't say another word. Seeing that the old man was absorbed in his study, Feng Wu didn't disturb him. Just then, Huyen-Chen finally looked at Feng Wu. Kiddo, you're amazing. Huyen-Chen smiled so broadly that his eyes couldn't be seen. He was so enthusiastic that he immediately went up to Feng Wu and poured her some tea. Feng Wu glanced at him. You don't doubt my ability anymore? Huyen-Chen said, Gosh, you're a semi-divine weapon refiner. You're amazing. He gave Feng Wu a thumbs up as he spoke. Well, Huyen-Chen nudged Feng Wu with his elbow and stammered. Feng Wu asked, What? Huyen-Chen said, Since the arm is so useful, why don't we work together and make a few more of them? It'll sell like hotcakes. Shall we split the profit? 50-50. Chapter 38:14 Chapter 38:14 50-50 Chapter 38:14 50-50 Shall we split the profit 50-50? Huyen-Chen looked at Feng Wu in excitement. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him and turned to leave. Huyen-Chen immediately caught up with her. Hey, don't leave even if you don't agree to that offer. Alright, no 50-50. How about 60-40? But Feng Wu didn't stop. Huyen-Chen said, 70-30. That's the lowest I'll go. I'll take 30% and you take 70%. That's very generous of me. Feng Wu glanced at him. Huyen-Chen stumbled back. Why are you looking at me like that? He felt a little flustered. Feng Wu finally said, That's impossible. Chen looked at Feng Wu stubbornly. Then tell me, how do you want to split the profit? Feng Wu said grumpily, that's the only one. Chen was shocked. What's that supposed to mean? Feng Wu said, you heard me. Chen said, why are there only? Feng Wu asked indifferently, do you have any more of that iron? Chen said, I. He realized that Feng Sun was the one who had set him up with those pieces of junk. He had left them in a corner to remind himself of his revenge. Who would have thought that they could be used to forge a piece of divine iron? Feng Wu shrugged. I forgot to mention that the value of the metal can't be measured by money. There's only a handful of them in this world. I'll build one for you when you find more of it. She had the blueprint anyway. Chen said, but he had wanted to make a small fortune with it, but as it turned out, he didn't even have an arm to use himself. Well, then, Chen followed her and asked gingerly, are you selling this arm? Feng Wu glanced at him. Aren't you going to take it? Chen threw a dirty look at Feng Wu. Of course not. Haven't we made a deal already? We've signed the agreement, so why should I take it? But I really like this arm. Feng Wu said, me too. Chen could only smile bitterly. A gentleman shouldn't take other people's favorite. If the arm is yours, it's yours. No one can take it away, not even me. But don't worry. I'll work hard to find more divine iron. You'll build a new one for me when I find it. Feng Wu said, all right. Chen sighed with emotion. You're amazing. I didn't know you could build something like this. Grandpa, is it really a semi-divine weapon? Chen still couldn't believe it. Old Huyen was too absorbed in the weapon to pay any attention to Chen. That was why Chen knew that it had to be a semi-divine weapon. Otherwise, his grandfather wouldn't have been so excited because he had made 2 saint-level weapons himself. You're amazing. Patting Feng Wu on the shoulder, Chen said in amazement, Grandpa has been saying that I'm a natural refiner and that I'll be even more amazing in the future, but compared to you, Chen was ashamed of his own inferiority. However, Chen patted Feng Wu on the shoulder again. But luck is fair. It won't favor a person. If it opens a door for you, it'll close the window. Feng Wu was confused. What do you mean? Why didn't she understand? Chen grinned. You don't know how to cultivate. It's like God has closed the window for you. Chapter 38:15 Chapter 38:15 Huyen Hongjun. Chapter 38:15 Huyen Hongjun. Feng Wu gave him another strange look without saying a word. Chen stared at Feng Wu. What do you want to say? Feng Wu said, you'll see. Chen wondered if he had missed something. Feng Wu only smiled at him without saying a word. Just then, they heard footsteps outside. Who's here? Hearing the knock on the door, Chen frowned and told Iron Tower, go have a look. Iron Tower soon came back with a few people. The leader was a pretty teenage girl. She had long, slender eyebrows that reminded one of a fox in the mountains. She was alluring and enchanting, but the lower half of her face was very innocent. Together, they formed an enchanting and pure face that was both unforgettable and attractive. The girl held a white fox in her arms. Her face was ghastly pale, and she seemed to be very weak. Wrapped in a thick cape, she looked even smaller and more endearing. She had 2 maids with her, and Feng Wu knew them. They were Tsaixia and Muley, whom she had met on the way here. Without a doubt, she was the legendary Princess Rao. Something flickered in Feng Wu's lowered eyes. Princess Rao, who had tried to kill Feng Wu before meeting her, was finally here. Feng Wu made up her mind that she would never forgive those who tried to kill her. A younger teenager stood next to the girl. Meanwhile, Chen was exchanging angry looks with the teenager. Huyen Hongjun, how dare you come here? Chen glared at him. Old Huyen finally woke up from his reverie and threw a dirty look at Huyen. Chen. Watch your language with His Royal Highness. A prince? Feng Wu thought to herself. It was said that the third prince and Princess Rao had the same mother. However, the third prince was a misbehaving man with a vile conduct, which gave the emperor a headache. Therefore, the right to inherit the throne was between Princess Rao and the eldest prince, and the third prince wasn't an option. Seeing the animosity between Huyen Yichen and the third prince, Feng Wu knew that there was something between the two of them. Princess Rao waved her hand and said casually, "Hongjun, come back." The third prince gave Huyen Yichen an arrogant glance, snorted, and went to Princess Rao's side. Princess Rao walked up to Huyen Yichen, sat down on a chair, and cut to the chase. "Have you seen anyone suspicious these days?" The two maids had made sure that everything was in order. Chairs had been brought out to be wiped clean, and even tea had been prepared. Feng Wu noticed that Huyen Yichen didn't like Princess Rao because he frowned and said impatiently, "What suspicious person? And why should I answer your question?" Before Princess Rao could say anything, the third prince smirked. "Huyen Yichen, who the hell do you think you are? How dare you talk to my sister like that? Your family is such a distant relative that we can barely be considered to be related." Huyen Yichen looked as if he couldn't be bothered to talk to the third prince. He frowned at Princess Rao and said, "Ask your question and leave. You know perfectly well that you're not welcome here." Feng Wu was bewildered. Huyen Yichen was supposed to be a warm, hospitable teenager, but now... Chapter 38:16 Chapter 38:16 What happened back then? Chapter 38:16 What happened back then? Feng Wu was perplexed. Huyen Yichen was supposed to be a warm, hospitable teenager, but now, he was obviously very hostile toward Princess Rao and her brother. Princess Rao only smiled. "Brother Yichen, please don't mind him. He's just a kid with a bad temper. You're older than him. Please be more patient." Huyen Yichen smirked. "A kid? More like a cannibal." He didn't reply and only stared at Princess Rao. Princess Rao asked, "Have you seen this person?" After that, she took out a portrait and handed it to Huyen Yichen. Huyen Yichen took it and cried out, "Holy crap! Who's this girl? She's so pretty." His eyes twinkled as he looked up at Princess Rao and asked, "Who's this girl? Who is she?" Princess Rao was speechless. Feng Wu noticed that she had clenched her fists in her sleeves and forced a smile. She said to Huyen Yichen, "Just tell me. Have you seen her?" Feng Wu glanced at the portrait and saw that it was indeed her face on it. Meanwhile, Huyen Yichen was too absorbed in the painting to hear what Princess Rao said. Princess Rao's eyes flickered, but she still smiled. "Brother Yichen. What? Are you talking to me?" Huyen Yichen looked at her in bewilderment and chuckled. "Is she a real person?" Princess Rao nodded. Huyen Yichen sighed with emotion. "She has to be the prettiest girl in the world. I don't think any girl on this continent will be her match." Princess Rao took a deep breath. She was about to say something when Huyen Yichen went on. "I wonder who's going to win her heart in the future. Shall I join the competition?" Princess Rao was a little annoyed. Before she could say anything, Saixia took the initiative and smiled obsequiously. "Young Master Yichen, our princess is saying that your shop has been here this whole time. Have you seen this girl around?" Huyen Yichen threw a dirty look at her and bellowed, "Are you an idiot? If I had met her, I would never have asked your princess if that's a real person." Saixia didn't dare to make a sound. She would have argued with anyone else, but although young Master Yichen was a very distant relative of the royal family, old Master Huyen was an excellent weapon refiner. Huyen Yichen was also the most promising weapon refiner in the northern Yen kingdom. Huyen Yichen was famous, talented, and had a promising future. Even the princess wouldn't offend him. As expected, no matter what she thought, Princess Rao still forced a smile. Brother Ichen still holds grudges against me for what happened back then. However, Huyen Ichen only smirked. Yes, I do. Don't you know that? If you hadn't protected him, heh? Huyen Ichen sounded indignant and aggrieved. Feng Wu noticed that the rims of his eyes had turned red, and he looked like he wanted to beat Huyen Hongjun up. However, the third prince was as arrogant as a peacock. He glanced at Huyen Ichen and said, "It wasn't all my fault. My sister has forced me to apologize to you. What more do you want?" Chapter 38:17 Chapter 38:17 Princess Raoshi. Chapter 38:17 Princess Raoshi. What more do you want? Are you going to kill me now? The third prince walked up to Huyen Ichen and sneered at him. You want to kill me? Bring it on. I'm right here in front of you. I'd like to see how you're going to do it. Infuriated, Huyen Ichen was about to charge at him. Old Huyen stepped out and grabbed him. Meanwhile, Princess Rao also grabbed the third prince's hand and gave him a warning look. Huyen Hongjun rubbed his nose and looked away, but Huyen Ichen was so angry that he was trembling. Feng Wu patted Huyen Ichen on the back to comfort him, somehow feeling sorry for him. Feng Wu didn't think she should confront Princess Rao now, but the princess was still on her blacklist, and she wouldn't let the princess get away with it. Princess Rao glared at Huyen Hongjun. Apologize. Huyen Hongjun raised his chin. No. Princess Rao said, Huyen Hongjun. The third prince couldn't understand it. Sister, am I a prince or not? If that's the case, why should I apologize to him? I've apologized for what happened back then. It's up to him whether he accepts it or not. I won't say sorry. So what if he has lost a sister? I had a cold for 3 days too. I'm a respected prince. Princess Rao took a deep breath. To be honest, she agreed with the third prince, but she still had to put on a show. After all, Huyen Ichen was still very useful. However, before she could finish, old Huyen said coldly, "The person you're looking for hasn't been here. You can leave now." Princess Rao knew that the old man had been utterly offended this time. The old man wouldn't have mattered, but he was the one who used to talk to the patriarch. Rising to her feet, Princess Rao smiled bitterly at the old man. My brother was to be blamed for what happened back then. As his sister, I didn't teach him well. I apologize to you. After that, she bowed. Old Huyen didn't respond. Princess Rao smiled bitterly. She was about to leave when she saw old Huyen's right arm. Wait a minute! Princess Rao cried out in surprise. Isn't that? Old Huyen frowned. How could he have forgotten about that? He had forgotten to put away the semi-divine weapon. Meanwhile, Princess Rao couldn't look away from the arm of discipline. Seeing that old Huyen wouldn't speak, she went on. Old master, is that really the arm of discipline? Seeing the look in Princess Rao's eyes, old Huyen realized that something wasn't right. He knew that Princess Rao might be a fragile girl, but once she made up her mind, she would make sure that she got what she wanted. But the arm wasn't his. If Princess Rao took it away because of him, the old master wouldn't be able to answer Feng Wu. Did you build this arm? If you ask me, it's a semi-divine one, isn't it? Asked Princess Rao. Old Huyen nodded perfunctorily and said to Iron Tower, see them out. But Princess Rao waved him off. Wait. She asked, Old Master, would you like to sell this arm? Old Huyen sighed in resignation. He knew it. He gave Feng Wu a guilty look. Meanwhile, Princess Rao had been staring at the old man, so she followed his gaze. Chapter 38:18 Chapter 38:18 Is it for sale? 1. Chapter 38:18 Is it for sale? 1. Her eyes met Feng Wu's. Princess Rao frowned a little. Who is she? She was so ordinary that one could call her ugly. Moreover, she wasn't capable at all. However, she was neither humble nor overbearing, looking as if the princess had offended her. Princess Rao found her ridiculous. She was a princess who had lived a comfortable life, and everyone else had followed her orders. However, she had been set off repeatedly today. Fearing that Feng Wu might get hurt, Huyen Yichen blocked her way and glared at Princess Rao. Why do you care who she is? Get lost. Princess Rao grew up with Huyen Yichen, and with what happened back then, Huyen Yichen knew her too well. Since Huyen Yichen knew that, Princess Rao stopped pretending. She looked from Feng Wu to old Huyen. Old master, are you selling this arm? Her tone became serious. Old man Huyen frowned. He knew very well that Princess Rao wanted it, and once the princess made up her mind, she would be in a lot of trouble. Even so, old Huyen still shook his head. I'm keeping it for someone else. How can I sell it? Really? They put it there? Staring at the arm, Princess Rao smiled. Who put it here? Neither Huyen Yichen nor the old wanted to reveal the owner, but Feng Wu couldn't bring them into trouble. She stepped out and said indifferently, It's mine. You! Princess Rao glanced at Feng Wu in an arrogant manner. Huyen Yichen was furious. Dragging Feng Wu to his side, he shot her a warning glance and feigned an angry tone. What are you talking about? However, by then, Princess Rao had already turned her attention to Feng Wu. Holding the fox in her arms, she caressed it, but kept her gaze on Feng Wu. She didn't say anything, but the people around her took the hint. Kai Shao went up to Feng Wu and said, Name your price. Both Huyen Yichen and the old man looked at Feng Wu because they couldn't make that decision for her. Feng Wu took the arm from old Huyen and casually put it on. Saisha frowned, stared at Feng Wu and said, I'm talking to you. Name your price. Feng Wu ignored the maid. She only glanced at Princess Rao, then turned to leave. Stop! Saisha glared at Feng Wu. Didn't you hear me? How dare you refuse to sell it to us? Feng Wu looked over her shoulder at Huyen Yichen. So, they're trying to force me to sell it. Huyen Yichen said, I think so. Feng Wu asked, Can I not sell it? Huyen Yichen crossed his arms and smiled at Feng Wu. Of course. Feng Wu said, But am I going to get attacked for that? Huyen Yichen glanced at Princess Rao and said to Feng Wu, According to the rules of Northern Yen, even a princess can't force you to do that. Otherwise, she'll be punished like a commoner. Feng Wu asked, Is she going to kill me and take my things? Huyen Yichen chuckled. Don't go anywhere. Just stay here in my shop. I'd like to see who dares to kill you. He sneered at Princess Rao as he spoke. Meanwhile, Chapter 3820 Chapter 3820 Is it for sale? 3. Chapter 3820 Is it for sale? 3. That's a great question. Huyen Yichen gloated. Of course, little Feng soon gave me the materials himself. Huyen Yichen was elated. He had thought that Feng Sun had set him up and had been trying to take revenge all these years, but as it turned out, he wasn't humiliated but had taken advantage of Feng Sun instead. Princess Rao was confused. Feng Sun is here in Northern Yen. Feng Wu was equally confused. Did Princess Rao know Feng Sun? In that case, did she know Jun Linyuan as well? Huyen Yichen waved his hand. I've refined all the materials from that pile of iron and only made one arm. If you want more, go to Feng Sun. I can't help you. Princess Rao nodded, gave the arm on Feng Wu's arm another long look, then left. As soon as Princess Rao was gone, Huyen Yichen let out a breath of relief. Finally, she's gone. Feng Wu smiled at him. Are you afraid of her? Huyen Yichen said, Of course not. I'm not afraid of her. I'm just a gentleman. Feng Wu shrugged as if saying, If you say so. Huyen Yichen glanced at Feng Wu and looked concerned. But, you have to be careful. From now on, don't leave the house unless you have to. If you must go out, bring me or Iron Tower with you. Got it? Feng Wu said, so, you're saying that she'll take the arm from me? Huyen Yichen said, you're underestimating her. Princess Rao has more capable men than you can count. She's one of His Majesty's heirs. Feng Wu asked curiously, can your princess be the successor to the throne as well? Huyen Yichen nodded. According to His Majesty, the royal family doesn't have any children but only heirs. We're doing this to make Northern Yen stronger. For instance, His Majesty isn't the previous king's son but a cousin. Because His Majesty's sons were either mediocre or useless, they couldn't lead Northern Yen to greatness. The Crown Prince and Princess Rao will compete for the throne in the end. That's why I said that Princess Rao wasn't to be trifled with, because she may be the next successor. Huyen Yichen shrugged. But even if she becomes the queen, I won't show her any courtesy. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. The countries around the Junwu Empire weren't all incredible forces. The Dongsang Kingdom had a blood tax system, and the Northern Yen Kingdom had a conglomerate system in that the heir to the throne wasn't limited to the ruler's offspring. The Junwu Empire was the only one that had a monarchy. Luckily, Jun Linyuan was the crown prince. If the second prince were to become the future emperor, the Junwu Empire might not be able to survive. Recalling what happened earlier, Feng Wu asked curiously, do you have grudges against that prince from before? Huyen Yichen looked embarrassed when the subject was brought up. Feng Wu waved her hands. If you don't want to talk about it. Huyen Yichen mumbled, it's not like I can't tell you. He looked up and saw that his grandfather had left. I can tell you, said Huyen Yichen. You're living with us now, and to Huyen Hongjun, you're on our side. He won't let you off the hook when he tries to hurt me. Chapter 38:21 Chapter 38:21 Did you meet him? 1. Chapter 38:21 Did you meet him? 1. Feng Wu asked curiously, I think he did you wrong. Why is he taking revenge? Huyen Yichen smirked. Do you expect him to know that? He then told Feng Wu why he hated the third prince so much. Many years ago, Huyen Yichen had a younger sister, who was only 5 years old. Back then, the third prince was only 3 years older than her, and was at his most mischievous age. Back then, she didn't like hanging out with the third prince, but he insisted on hanging out with her. The prince's mother then took her into the imperial palace, but in the end, Huyen Yichen received news of his sister's death. According to the queen, his sister had fallen into the water, and the third prince had tried to save her, but Huyen Yichen smirked. Like hell I will. My sister hates water, and she's so quiet and well-behaved. Whv would she Olave in the water? Someone must be lying. Later, the queen tried to compensate the Huyen family, but the old man turned her down. The incident only calmed down when the king handled it himself. However, the third prince and queen were the only ones who had gotten over it. As for Huyen Yichen, he had never forgotten his grudge. Huyen Yichen smirked. He tried to save my sister? One day, I'll slap him and make him tell the truth. Feng Wu patted him on the shoulder. I'm on your side. Huyen Yichen said, yes. That night, when Feng Wu went to bed, she finally saw Little Phoenix, who had disappeared for days. Feng Wu's eyes widened when she saw the filthy little phoenix with its injured wing. Why are you injured? She had been so busy forging the arm that she had almost forgotten about Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix had said that it was going to find Huyen Yanba, but it was injured when it returned. Little Phoenix pursed its lips and looked frustrated. Feng Wu asked curiously, what happened? Did someone stop you? You couldn't get in? You had a fight and you lost? Feng Wu knew Little Phoenix too well. It wouldn't tell her anything if she asked in a normal way, so she tried to goad it into action. As expected, the bird flared up. Lost? Me? How can I lose? I'd rather die than lose. Feng Wu smiled and cajoled it. That's right. You're the best bird in the world. No other bird is as good as you. However, that was actually not the right thing to say now. Little Phoenix gave Feng Wu a resentful look, turned around in frustration, and crouched down with its back to her. Feng Wu pursed her lips again and patted its butt. There. Tell me. What happened? Did you see your little Yanba? Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu in frustration and rubbed its feathers. Feng Wu said, "So, you didn't get to see him." Little Phoenix stomped its foot and said in frustration, "If that stupid bird hadn't stopped me, I would have been able to get in." Feng Wu rubbed her chin. "Let me guess. Are you saying that there's a bird inside that's more capable than you?" Little Phoenix didn't buy it. "That's because I've only just recovered my ability. I'll be much more capable than it in the future. It's nothing. I'll kick its ass." Feng Wu fought back her laughter. All right. You'll be very capable in the future. So, you couldn't get in now, could you? Humph. Little Phoenix turned around angrily. Chapter 38:22. Chapter 38:22. Did you meet him, too? Chapter 38:22. Did you meet him, too? Feng Wu laughed. Little Phoenix turned around and glared at Feng Wu. "Stop laughing." Feng Wu asked curiously, "But have you really not seen Senior Brother Huyen?" Little Phoenix shook its head. "No, I couldn't. That bird was blocking my way." Said, "How about you show me the way? I'll see if I can handle that bird." Little Phoenix hesitated. "You're too weak to go in now." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. That was a dead end. Rubbing her chin, Feng Wu was trying to figure out a way to meet Patriarch Huyen when there was a tiny noise outside. Little Phoenix stiffened. It then whispered to Feng Wu in its head, "Someone's coming. Hide." Feng Wu nodded. She quickly rolled up the duvet so that it looked like someone was sleeping under it, then hid behind the door. The next second, smoke slowly blew into the room. Someone had used the enchanting incense. Didn't she know that Feng Wu was an expert in medicine? Taking a sniff, Feng Wu realized that the level of the toxin was quite high. It wasn't something just anyone could make. It had to be a supreme-level knockout powder. Who was coming to her room in the middle of the night? What did they want? Feng Wu looked at the arm on her right arm involuntarily and narrowed her eyes. The people outside had no idea that Feng Wu had neutralized the toxin and were still blowing it into the room. Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu, who nodded at it. Hence, Little Phoenix squeezed out of the open window and quietly hid behind the person outside. The bird had an invisibility skill, which enabled it to do great things in the Hua family. After Little Phoenix flew out, it saw a man dressed in black blowing toxins into the room. It looked around and reported back to Feng Wu, old Huyen was drugged, and so were Huyen Yichen and Iron Tower. Everyone in the family is lying there now. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix sighed with emotion as it flew. They're good at forging weapons, but they're not very capable in terms of cultivation. They won't be able to protect you. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Let's get down to business. Little Phoenix smiled bitterly as well. That's right. A lot of people are here. There are 6 people outside your door and 2 each outside the old Huyen Yichen and Iron Tower's room. Feng Wu asked, "How capable are they?" Little Phoenix heaved a long sigh. "If they were just a bunch of random people, I would just annihilate them all. However, they're all very capable people. The weaker ones are guarding the Huyen family, and they're only junior spiritual overlords. But there are 4 intermediate spiritual overlords and 2 peak spiritual overlords guarding your door. Who on earth is so resourceful? They sent so many people to kill a good-for-nothing like you, who has lost all her spiritual essence. How terrifying! There were so many of them." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She looked down at her arm of discipline. Without spiritual essence, she couldn't exert its full power. What should she do now? If she woke up the Huyan family, what if they got killed? Do you know who sent them? Little Phoenix asked Feng Wu curiously. Feng Wu nodded. I do. Little Phoenix asked, who is it? Feng Wu said indifferently, apart from that Princess Rao, there's no one else. Chapter 38:23 Chapter 38:23 Did you meet him? 3. Chapter 38:23 Did you meet him? 3. Little Phoenix was surprised. She knows where you live. Feng Wu shook her head. Little Phoenix said, that is to say, she targeted you again without recognizing who you are. Feng Wu nodded. Little Phoenix said, are you her archenemy now? Feng Wu shrugged with a wry smile. So, what should we do now? Little Phoenix asked Feng Wu. I'm a spiritual overlord now, and I'm a peak one. I've only just woken up from this enlightenment, and I'm already very capable. Feng Wu nodded. Impressive. Little Phoenix said, yes, but you're still a cripple. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix said, I can take care of one peak-level spiritual overlord, but there are still so many left. What are you going to do? Feng Wu was worried as well. Why did Princess Rao have so many spiritual overlords under her command? Had she summoned all the spiritual overlords she could summon? Seeing the smoke rising into the air, Feng Wu smiled. I may have an idea. Is that so? Little Phoenix asked Feng Wu curiously. Tell me. Feng Wu smiled. She had prepared a lot of things because she had been keeping an eye on Princess Rao. Had it been somewhere else, she wouldn't have been able to handle all these capable cultivators, but now she had such a great opportunity. She knew how to get rid of all the spiritual overlords. Thinking about what happened to the Hua and Zhou families, Feng Wu was amazed by herself. She told Little Phoenix, make as much noise as you can to stall them. I'll need 10 minutes to set it up. Little Phoenix said, I'll do my best. After that, Feng Wu ignored what was going on outside and focused on setting up the room. Because she knew that Princess Rao might send assassins here, Feng Wu was prepared. She had set up a formation room in this room a while ago. The tables, chairs, bed frames, bricks, and wooden candlesticks. Feng Wu had carefully set up each corner according to the formation and had concentrated on carving inscriptions. Anyone who stepped into the room would be hit. Feng Wu removed the arm of discipline, powered it up, and put it in the most important position. As for what she was going to do with it, no one knew. Was that all Feng Wu was going to do? Of course, it was more than that. Spiritual overlords were very difficult to handle. Right now was moving so fast that one couldn't follow her movements. Princess Rao, why do you have to fight me? Feng Wu was getting ready when she heard a loud noise outside. The door opened with a thump. What on earth was going on here? The spiritual overlords outside were astonished. 4 spiritual overlords were standing in front of Feng Wu, and the other 2 had been lured away by Little Phoenix. The 4 spiritual overlords looked at one another in bewilderment. They couldn't understand why the door would open so suddenly. Don't let her get away! All 4 of them had their faces covered by a cloth, so that no one would see their faces. The head of the 4 gestured at the others to move forward. They filed into Feng Wu's room. Chapter 38:24 Chapter 38:24 Did you meet him? 4. Chapter 38:24 Did you meet him? 4. They filed into Feng Wu's room. They frowned when they entered because they sensed something different. The door was suddenly closed behind them. Was that the wind? They looked over their shoulders and saw that the door was tightly shut. The only light came from a tiny gap next to the window, through which the silver moonlight shone. The leader of the team was the tallest, and he made a hand gesture. Hence, the 4 of them surrounded the bed in 4 directions. They eyed the bed with contempt. According to the information they received, they were going to assassinate a person without any spiritual essence, and take a weapon. That was all. They couldn't for the life of them figure out why the 6 of them were sent here for such a simple task. What was the princess thinking? What they didn't know was that Princess Rao had sent all of them here not only to rob the treasure but also to intimidate and take revenge on Huyen Yichen. Huyen Yichen had disrespected her, and she couldn't stand it. Since she could command so many people, why not use them? The duvet was rolled up on the bed, and someone was lying inside. The leader nodded at the others, then walked up to the bed. He always liked to kill with a blade. However, the next second, when he lifted the duvet, he realized. Empty? Where was she? At that critical moment, there was a slight noise outside. The window had closed at some point, and no light could get in. All 4 of them had strange looks on their faces, but no one could see their faces clearly in the dark. The target is missing. They were spiritual elders, but they let Feng Wu get away? That was preposterous. Let's go. The man in the lead found the room so strange that he wanted to retreat. However, he suddenly couldn't move his leg. Because it suddenly became very quiet. He felt like a fetus was in his mother's womb. They were all smiling happily. They seemed to be immersed in their dreams. Feng Wu didn't go out. Instead, she stayed in the room that was dozens of square meters in size. She hid quietly on the roof beam and waited for the poison to take effect. Yes. Feng Wu had used poison. She didn't have much toxin with her, but these people had used such a potent powder. Hence, Feng Wu was able to quickly create a hallucinogen based on the powder, which turned things around for them. A spiritual overlord was human after all. It was inevitable that they would be affected as well. Kiddo! A voice came from outside. It was Huyen Yichen. Feng Wu saw that the spiritual overlords almost woke up. She gritted her teeth and increased the dosage. As for herself, she opened the door in the dark and quietly showed Huyen Yichen in. Huyen Yichen let out a breath of relief when he saw Feng Wu. He almost thought that Feng Wu was dead. Before he could say anything, Feng Wu tugged at him and quietly sat him down on the beam. The moment Feng Wu opened the door, Huyen Yichen saw the 4 people inside and was astonished. They. Chapter 38:25 Chapter 38:25 Assassination in the Dark 1. Chapter 38:25 Assassination in the Dark 1. They. Huyen Yichen almost cried out. Feng Wu covered his mouth in time. If Feng Wu didn't cover his mouth in time and let him shout, all her effort would go to waste. How? Huyen Yichen was astonished. Feng Wu lowered her voice. Do you know them? Huyen Yichen nodded immediately. I've met them before. After a pause, he lowered his voice. I saw them at Princess Rao's place. Why are there so many spiritual overlords here? Feng Wu was confused. Isn't there any outside your room? Huyen Yichen shook his head. No. Feng Wu thought that the spiritual overlords guarding Huyen Yichen's door had been lured away by Little Phoenix. They were still talking when Feng Wu heard Little Phoenix's anxious voice. I can't hold on much longer. It was talking to Feng Wu through her mind, so only Feng Wu could hear it. Little Phoenix was only a bird that hadn't reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage yet, and it was already a miracle that it had lasted this long. She had to take care of these 4 people first. Feng Wu didn't have any spiritual essence with her at the moment, nor did she have the arm. She couldn't break his defense. One had to be a spiritual overlord to do that. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder at Huyen Yichen. What's your level? Huyen Yichen said to Feng Wu in a low voice. I'm still a little bit away from the spiritual overlord stage. Feng Wu asked, how close? Huyen Yichen said, I'm a level 8 spiritual lord now, and it'll be years before I become a spiritual overlord. Feng Wu said, I'll help you. Huyen Yichen asked, what? He was utterly confused. How was the girl going to help him? She didn't have any spiritual essence at all. However, Huyen Yichen saw Feng Wu beckoning at a spiritual overlord in the dark. Why did you bring him here? I'm only a level 8 spiritual lord. I can't handle him. Huyen Yichen was anxious. But Feng Wu wasn't worried at all. She summoned the unconscious spiritual overlord and said to Huyen Yichen, "Of all the people here, he's the only one with the same element as you." Feng Wu whispered a cultivation technique to Huyen Yichen. Got it? Despite his anxiety, Huyen Yichen still had a good memory, so he nodded at Feng Wu. But, Feng Wu said, "Kill him before he wakes up." Huyen Yichen said with a long face, But we can't break his defense. Spiritual lords were no match for spiritual overlords. However, before Huyen Yichen could complain, Feng Wu waved her hand, and the arm appeared in her hand. Huyen Yichen's eyes lit up when he saw the arm of discipline. The arm! Feng Wu nodded. Can you break their defense now? Huyen Yichen said excitedly, I can do that. After that, Huyen Yichen quickly put on the arm of discipline. Feng Wu's original plan was to let the spiritual overlords activate the arm at last and let it kill them. However, it would be too time-consuming and wouldn't have a high chance of succeeding. Since Huyen Yichen was here, Feng Wu let him do it for her. In the darkness, a sharp dagger appeared at the tip of the arm. It pierced the spiritual overlord's heart without making a sound. Chapter 38:26 Chapter 38:26 Assassination in the Dark 2. Chapter 38:26 Assassination in the Dark 2. The moment his heart was pierced, the spiritual overlord woke up from the pain. His eyes snapped open in the darkness. They were as sharp as ice. He immediately saw the two people in front of him. One was a teenager with a strange arm, and the other was an ordinary-looking girl. The look on his face was so ferocious that Huyen Yichen, who had never killed anyone before, was baffled. Feng Wu gave Huyen Yichen a nudge. His throat! Huyen Yichen realized what had happened. At the same time, the spiritual overlord realized that someone was trying to kill him. As for his friends, the spiritual overlord was shocked when he saw that his 3 teammates were all wandering off. Although he didn't know what had happened, he could tell that there was something wrong with the 2 teenagers. And that girl was their target tonight. At that thought, the spiritual overlord struck out, but it was too late. He had underestimated the speed of the arm. Seeing that Huyen Yichen didn't have time to react, Feng Wu pressed a key spot on the arm. She then heard the sound of something ripping through the air. With a whoosh, a thin needle flew out of the arm and pierced the forehead of the spiritual overlord less than a meter in front of them. Out of all the places, the area between the eyebrows was the core of the mind. The needle pierced his forehead and reached his brain. The needle Feng Wu made wasn't just any sewing needle. Spiritual overlords could survive ordinary needles as long as their cerebrovascular vessels weren't injured. However, the needles Feng Wu had made for the arm were known as burst needles. What was a burst needle? As the name suggested, the needle would explode when it entered the brain. When a capable cultivator cultivated, they might be able to defend their head, but there was nothing they could do to their brain. Therefore, when the spiritual overlord threw a punch at Feng Wu, and when Huyen Yichen shielded Feng Wu with his arms, everything seemed to freeze at that moment. Huyen Yichen didn't feel the pain he had expected, so he slowly opened his eyes. What he saw was a giant figure standing in front of him. The man's eyes were wide open, his body was stiff, and he didn't move a muscle. One couldn't tell if it was alive or dead. Huyen Yichen waved his hand in front of the man's face, but there was no reaction. He poked the man and saw that he fell backward. Before the dead spiritual overlord fell to the ground, Feng Wu reached out to catch him. If she was a little bit slower, the sound would have woken up the other 3 spiritual overlords. Feng Wu was a little bit too late, so she tried to use herself as a cushion. When Huyen Ichen realized what was going on, he grabbed the spiritual overlord and stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. He spoke very quietly, fearing that he might wake up the other spiritual overlord. He's dead. Feng Wu silenced him with a wave of her hand. Huyen Ichen was speechless. Dead? The spiritual overlord was dead just like that. Spiritual overlords were already very powerful in the northern Yen kingdom, and only a handful of them could be found in the empire. However, the ugly girl had just killed them. Feng Wu had Huyen Ichen move the spiritual overlord to a corner of the room. Chapter 38-27 Chapter 38-27 Assassination in the Dark 3. Chapter 38-27 Assassination in the Dark 3. Huyen Ichen lowered his voice. Is he really dead? Feng Wu nodded. Huyen Ichen scratched his head. Did I do that? Feng Wu nodded again. Huyen Ichen said, but, although I've stabbed him in the heart, his defense is too strong. The blade didn't completely destroy his heart. With the capability of a spiritual overlord, it shouldn't be that easy for him to. He looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. I saw you shoot a needle, but wasn't it just one needle? Was it that effective? Instead of answering Huyen Ichen, Feng Wu pointed at the other assassins. There are 3 more to go. Huyen Ichen stared at Feng Wu in disbelief and stammered, Are you going to? Feng Wu nodded. Just repeat what you've done. Huyen Ichen said, But I'm not their match. Just then, Huyen Ichen saw something incredible. Crouching down, Feng Wu searched the spiritual overlord's head for something. Soon, she came back. She stuffed something half-transparent into Huyen Ichen's head. Arg! Huyen Ichen felt a stabbing pain in his head, and almost burst into tears. He didn't have time to ask any questions. There was a flash of white light, and a lot of things rushed into his head so fast that he almost couldn't take them all. It didn't take Huyen Ichen long to come out of the illusion. He turned to Feng Wu with wide-open eyes. You know the soul-absorbing technique. Feng Wu glanced at him. It's not that. Huyen Ichen said, What is it then? How could you extract his soul and stuff it in my head? Feng Wu shrugged and asked, How do you feel? Huyen Ichen said, I feel like I've comprehended a lot of things about the spiritual overlord stage. All of a sudden, Feng Wu asked, Can you activate the spiritual overlord's power now? Huyen Ichen said, Maybe. While Huyen Ichen was mumbling, Feng Wu summoned a second spiritual overlord. She then turned to Huyen Ichen and gestured at him. Huyen Ichen was eager to try. He wanted to see how capable he was. It wasn't difficult to do the same thing again. Huyen Ichen killed the second spiritual overlord as soon as the latter woke up. Huyen Ichen was ecstatic. He looked at Feng Wu in excitement. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was looking at the incense that had almost burnt out. Once the incense was burnt out, those men would wake up. At that thought, Feng Wu told Huyen Ichen in a hurry, Quickly! We don't have enough time. Huyen Ichen nodded. He was able to kill spiritual overlords because they were in an illusion. Although he didn't know why they were in that illusion, he and the girl would be dead when they woke up. At that thought, before Feng Wu could summon the spiritual overlord, Huyen Ichen had put on the arm of discipline. Luckily, the arm was a semi-divine weapon that could break through the defense of spiritual overlords. Moreover, his comprehension had reached the level of a spiritual overlord, so he was able to exert more power. Before long, Huyen Ichen killed the remaining 2 spiritual overlords. Chapter 38-28 Chapter 38-28 Assassination in the Dark 4. Chapter 38-28 Assassination in the Dark 4. Seeing the dead spiritual overlords in the room, Huyen Yichen didn't know what to do. He stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. I killed 4 spiritual overlords? Oh my god! Huyen Yichen felt that he was only a level 8 spiritual lord and was too far away from these spiritual overlord. However, the 4 spiritual overlords lying in the room had really been killed by him. I feel like I'm dreaming. Huyen Yichen still couldn't believe it. Just then, Little Phoenix cried out outside. Although it had the invisibility spell, the peak spiritual overlords were very capable. Moreover, there were 2 peak spiritual overlords and 3 intermediate spiritual overlords outside. We've finally killed them all. Let's get out of here. Huyen Yichen thought that everything was going to be alright, so he turned to leave with Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu only gave him a strange look and told him the truth. What? Huyen Yichen was so frightened that he almost fell to the ground. Staring at Feng Wu, he said nervously, there are still 3 intermediate spiritual overlords and 2 peak spiritual overlords? Feng Wu nodded. Huyen Yichen was astonished. Are all the capable cultivators of Northern Yin here tonight? Feng Wu shrugged. Maybe. Huyen Yichen asked, Are we going to die? Feng Wu said, No. Huyen Yichen said, But there are so many of them. My grandpa is amazing, but he's only good at forging weapons. There's nothing he can do. Listening to the noise outside, Feng Wu frowned and asked Huyen Yichen, Have you delivered the letter I told you to deliver? Huyen Yichen said, Of course. I've sent it out in secret. I was worried that Princess Rao would send someone to spy on us, so I told the person to sneak into the eldest prince's residence. Feng Wu nodded and murmured, By now, his men should be here. Huyen Yichen asked, Whose men? Feng Wu said, The eldest prince's. Huyen Yichen almost choked on his own spit. He stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Whose people? Feng Wu said grumpily, Princess Rao has a troop, and there's no way that the eldest prince, who's competing with her for the throne, doesn't have one. By right, his people should be here by now. Huyen Yichen said, You're just an ugly girl. Who do you think you are? How dare you order a prince to help you? He'll never listen to you. Feng Wu said, If I give you the arm of discipline if you have a troop, and if Princess Rao is the enemy, will you send out your men? Huyen Yichen said, Of course. Feng Wu said, There you go. Huyen Yichen said, But how did you know that Princess Rao would send someone to kill you tonight? Feng Wu smiled. She may not want to kill me, but she'll definitely send someone to take the arm away. Huyen Yichen agreed. She always has to have everything she wants. The arm of discipline was the first time she couldn't have something. With her temperament, she would have to take it. But you know her really well. Feng Wu thought to herself, If I don't know her well, I'll be dead by now. Just then, they heard the sound of a fierce battle outside. Reinforcements are here. Huyen Yichen looked at Feng Wu in excitement and took her to look out of the window. Look, someone is fighting Princess Rao's men. It's a fierce battle. Chapter 38-29 Chapter 38-29 The Eldest Prince, 1. Chapter 38-29 The Eldest Prince, 1. Feng Wu followed his gaze and saw what he was looking at. A short distance away, 2 capable cultivators were fighting Princess Rao's men. The 2 of them were fighting peak spiritual overlords, which meant that they were equally capable. Are there only 2 of them? Huyen Yichen grew anxious. There were still quite a few spiritual overlords left. Apart from the 2 that were fighting, there were 3 more. However, the 3 of them were slightly weaker. They were intermediate spiritual overlords. Even so, they were still very difficult to handle. They were spiritual overlords after all. Just then, they heard someone screaming outside. It was Little Phoenix. Thanks to its invisibility spell, the bird had been able to make several spiritual overlords run around outside. Otherwise, Feng Wu would have been dead by now. Come in, Feng Wu reminded Little Phoenix. You'd better take a spiritual overlord inside with you. We won't be able to handle them all for a while. Little Phoenix was astonished when Feng Wu told it that they had killed all 4 spiritual overlord. They're really dead? You're not lying, are you? You're a good-for-nothing, and Huyen Yichen isn't capable at all. Did you really do it? Feng Wu said grumpily, although I don't have any spiritual essence now, I still have other skills. Feng Wu was good at everything from alchemy to weapon refinement, medicine refinement, and formation. Little Phoenix agreed with her. Master Mu's pupil was anything but weak. She had just killed 4 spiritual overlords when she was still a good-for-nothing. That was quite an achievement. 3 men are chasing me. Wait for me. I'll take one of them with me. After talking to Feng Wu, Little Phoenix started making the people chase it. It didn't take long for it to come back with one of them. Little Phoenix said to Feng Wu, "You can have that one. I'll bring the other one back in a minute. Hurry up." After that, Little Phoenix left the spiritual overlord behind and flew out of the room. The spiritual overlord was brought in by Little Phoenix, and before he knew it, the bird was out of sight. He was about to leave the room when the door closed with a loud bang. The spiritual overlord was dazed for a moment. Before he knew it, he was sucked into the spell. Together with the formation Feng Wu had set up, his head spun, and he couldn't think straight. Feng Wu glanced at Huyen Yichen. Huyen Yichen nodded. Hence, when the spiritual overlord fell into an illusion, Huyen Yichen struck out with the arm of discipline. There were needles, daggers, and other things on the arm. Feng Wu had installed quite a few gadgets. Before the spiritual overlord could react, he was struck by the arm's hidden weapon in the area between the eyebrows, his throat, and his heart. The spiritual overlord screamed. When he came back to himself, he saw a young man in front of him, and he had 3 fatal wounds. "You!" Before he could finish, he heard a voice outside. 15? Are you there? Chapter 38:30 Chapter 38:30 The Eldest Prince, 2. Chapter 38:30 The Eldest Prince, 2. As it turned out, the person severely injured by the arm was known as 15. That was probably his ranking. Feng Wu gave Huyen Yichen a warning look. Huyen Yichen realized that now wasn't the time to be baffled. Thump! The arm struck out. The hidden weapons were only add-ons, and its most lethal force relied on the punch. 15. The spiritual overlord kicked the door open and rushed into the room. 15. His eyes turned bloodshot red when he saw what was going on. For he saw 15, his friend, lying on the ground and staring at him with wide-open eyes. "Arg!" He bellowed and spared no effort. The bellow of an intermediate spiritual overlord wasn't that easy to withstand. Earlier, the spiritual overlords didn't dare to make too much noise to disturb the others because they were assassins. However, things had turned against them, and they couldn't care less. The spiritual overlord bellowed, and the roof of Feng Wu's room was lifted off the ground. Feng Wu had borrowed the darkness of the night to set up the formation. Now that the darkness had been overturned, half of the formation was destroyed. As if that wasn't enough, the spiritual overlord bellowed again. Even the wall of the room Feng Wu was in had been blown away. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. That sound wave was incredible. Luckily, Feng Wu had prepared for this and had backed off beforehand. Otherwise, she would have been blown away by now. When the entire room was blown away, Feng Wu's formation probably wouldn't work anymore. However, the spiritual overlord finally saw what was going on. He drew in his breath. Oh God! He wanted to scream because there were 5 dead bodies. 5 dead spiritual overlords were lying side by side, and each one had been severely injured. Looking up, he didn't see anyone, but he saw 2 figures running down the slope. "Stop!" The spiritual overlord bellowed and charged at them. He moved as fast as a streak of lightning. Fearing that Feng Wu would get hurt, Huyen Yichen pushed her away. He then turned to face the spiritual overlord. Thump! The man knocked Huyen Yichen away with one strike, and his back smashed into the wall. The next second the wall collapsed. The spiritual overlord didn't even look at Feng Wu. All his attention was on Huyen Yichen. Huyen Yichen was wearing the arm, which was their target this time. He slowly walked toward Huyen Yichen with a cold look in his eyes. Blue veins popped on his forehead. All 5 of his friends were dead. Die! The spiritual overlord bent down and grabbed Huyen Yichen by the throat. Huyen Yichen raised his arm and struck down at the spiritual overlord. However, although Huyen Yichen was already a spiritual overlord, H's was still a spiritual king in terms of his capability. Therefore, his opponent was only slightly injured and was going to throttle him. Chapter 38-31 Chapter 38-31 The Eldest Prince, 3. Chapter 38-31 The Eldest Prince, 3. Just then, there was a loud thump, and a spear pierced the spiritual overlord from behind. Cough, cough! Huyen Yichen was almost strangled. His vision went dark, and he thought he was going to die. Luckily, looking up, he wanted to know who had saved him, but... Grandpa! Huyen Yichen cried out. It was indeed old Huyen. As soon as Huyen Yichen pushed Feng Wu away, Feng Wu knew what he was going to do. He wanted to stall for time. He knew perfectly well that he was no match for an intermediate spiritual overlord, but he still pushed her away without hesitation. She was going to call Little Phoenix, but the bird was too busy killing the last spiritual overlord to do anything. Feng Wu smacked her own head. How could she forget? She went to wake Huyen up with some medicine. Therefore, Huyen Yichen was amazed when he saw his grandfather. Grandpa! You! An idea struck Huyen Yichen, and he looked sad. Huyen threw a dirty look at Huyen Yichen and left with a darkened face. Huyen Yichen looked at Feng Wu. Did you bring my grandfather here? Feng Wu nodded. Huyen Yichen sighed. Grandpa is mad. Feng Wu was confused. Why is he so angry? Huyen Yichen sighed and said, To save me, my grandfather made an oath in front of the Queen and Princess Rao that he would never use his spiritual essence again. He has broken his promise. Feng Wu looked at Huyen Yichen in bewilderment. Most of the people here are sent by Princess Rao. She's only bullying your grandpa because he can't do anything. If we don't do anything, she'll get what she wants. That's so stupid. Huyen Yichen agreed with her. Feng Wu said, When your grandfather made that oath, was it because of your sister? Did you go after Princess Rao? Huyen Yichen looked at Feng Wu in amazement. Was she even human? How did she know that? Feng Wu said, But look, Princess Rao broke the rule first. So what if your grandfather broke his oath? He can't just stand there and watch while they try to kill us. That's not keeping his promise. That's called being pedantic and stupid. Huyen Yichen scrambled to his feet. That's true. Before he could finish, Huyen Yichen covered his head and drew in his breath. Feng Wu glanced at him. Can't hold it anymore. Huyen Yichen nodded. Iron Tower, who had finally shown up, said anxiously, Young master, let me carry you. After that, he was going to carry Huyen Yichen toward the toilet. No, it's not that. Huyen Yichen waved his hands and said, I'm going to make a breakthrough. Huyen Yichen wanted to find a quiet place to cultivate and make a breakthrough, but the entire shop was in a mess, and he couldn't find a quiet. But, moreover, and he couldn't stankle it anymore. He said to Feng Wu, Protect me. After that, he sat down cross-legged and started cultivating, ready to make a breakthrough. Iron Tower watched this in astonishment. His young master was going to make a breakthrough? What happened while he was sleeping? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.